welcome everyone. Happy New Year to all of you here with us tonight and out there watching this evening. I'm going to call to order the January 9th, 2024 Board of Education meeting. With us this evening is Mr. Krasnov, Mrs. Flynn, Mrs. Guernsey, myself, Mrs. Jacobson, Superintendent Mr. Testani, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Peterson, and Mrs. Rinaldi. If we could all rise and start the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mrs. Rinaldi, would you like to start us off? Welcome, students. Welcome back. Happy New Year. Glad to see you all this evening. You guys are up with your reports.
Good evening, board, and good evening, all. I'm so happy that we are back in school from the break. I hope you all had a fantastic holiday and Happy New Year. We're excited to celebrate our winter sports and at next Friday's winter pep rally, which will take place at the large gym. Speaking of our large gym, it's looking extra snazzy with a brand new painted floor.
Good evening. We have our midterm exams starting this Friday, January 12th, and concluding next Friday, January 18th. Students will be graded on various exams, varying from traditional tests to projects and assessments.
As many of you know, winter acceptances for colleges have been brewing in, so I would love to say congratulations to our seniors who have committed to their schools. Some of the amazing class of 2024 students have simply impressed us with the amazing colleges that they have committed to, such as Marist, Syracuse, Villanova, Dartmouth, Boston University, and so many amazing schools that our amazing Ward seniors have committed to.
Okay, right before break, the Ward Amstud American Studies classes went to a field trip to Newport, Rhode Island, for their unit on the Gilded Age. So it was a great experience. I believe 3 buses were taken, so a good portion of the junior class. It included tours of 3 mansions and plenty of free time to explore the great town of Newport.
Mr. Cavanna will hold a grade-wide Google Classroom meet for our seniors tomorrow regarding graduation planning and ordering caps and gowns.
All right, and then Mr. Brown, our Director of Student Services, and our school counselors will be holding the secondary planning junior assembly at the end of the month to kick off the college process for the class of 2025.
To wrap up our ward recap, our ward DECA team has been preparing their business plans and role plays since October, and we are finally ready to compete in states which will be held March 4th at the AquaTurf.
Hello, my name is Samantha Mariquin. Our students are working on their project-based midterms and finals for the next 2 weeks. Currently, there are 9 projects with the content area teachers. For 4 weeks in January, the students will be working with a mentor on how to care for the bees. The Connecticut Beekeepers Association is providing videos for the training. A grant was developed to study a greenhouse in February. The students will build it and begin adding seedlings for this year's Fitz's flower pollinator garden and our edible garden. On January 11th, our students will be on a Zoom call with the students from a Bridgeport school, Luis Marin. We will discuss our mentorship program and plan for our first collaboration on February 1st at Walter Fitz. Our community partnership with the Pollinator Pathway program will be joining us on a Zoom call. Students will be assembling a wooden table for our outdoor classroom called Walter's Workspace. And for the next 2 weeks, some of our creative students will be adding to 3 murals at Walter Fitz as part of our beautification project. Students will be painting and adding 3 dimensions in native flowers and pollinators. Our student-led school climate committee is meeting to plan an Asian New Year celebration and a Black History Month celebration in February. And we are hoping to add more guest speakers and a variety of food for each event. Okay, in collaboration with UConn and the Environmental Protection Agency, we have been awarded with a $5,000 grant to become a Long Island school, and we will be working with the Mill River Wetland Committee, Water Warrior Program, and Tim Bishop from the Fairfield Conservation Department to take data on water measurements in Mill River, Ash Creek, and Long Island Sound. There's a lot more information about this research and technology grant, but Connecticut Sea Grant has asked us to wait until January 31st to release a joint press statement. Thank you.
Hi, how are you guys today? I hope you guys had a wonderful break. I know at Ludlow we definitely did. It was very exciting, getting back into the role of things, especially so near to midterms. So we had candlelight, and our wonderful, wonderful musicians actually performed 6 shows over 3 days. So my congratulations to them. It was beautiful. I hope you guys got a chance to see it. We had the first ever Shakespeare competition Friday night, where students had to read a soliloquy. And they were judged on how well they were able to read it in a way that conveyed to the audience the emotion of the play. And Audrey Compare actually won. She's going to be going to regional competitions in Greenwich. Secondly, we have the pep rally, and we actually included some club participations, which was really nice, especially as a student that chose to focus more on the club, debate, mock trial aspect of school instead of the sport aspect of it. It was nice to see that being represented, especially for students that maybe want to get involved but don't really know where they could go. We're gonna have the badminton and volleyball tournament coming up in January. It's been a very, very long-standing tradition. And we're going to be hosting the badminton tournament for juniors and the volleyball tournament for seniors. It's going to take place the 19th and the 22nd, respectively. So basically, it's considered a midterm for students that play gym. I know a lot of them look forward to it. People, they have to qualify for it, so you need to beat all the other teams. It's very fun, and it's nice to see a little bit of competitive spirit. We also have college planning night for grade 11 parents, juniors, and for grade 11 parents, so juniors, which is nice since starting the preparation earlier, especially for parents that maybe aren't familiar with the American education system or maybe haven't gone to college themselves. They might not understand it. I know that for us, both of our parents, France and Brazil respectively, they might have not understood it very well. So it's nice to have a little bit of that buffer where you feel like the school is there to support you and educating your parents on how to best help you. Mrs. Powers is gonna be going into the college process, and she's wonderful. We're also gonna have the 24th virtual course selection for current Ludlow students that are gonna go on to pick their courses for the next year, which it's gonna be fun. You wanna know what class you're going into, you wanna know the teacher, you wanna see if you might like their teaching style, if you like their vibe. So it's always nice to have a resource to go back to. And we're also going to have a gap year presentation and fairs on January 11th, because sometimes you don't want to jump right back into your education. And it's nice to know that you have a little buffer, especially if you're planning to maybe work after high school and you still want to, give college a chance. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
So coming up is the Western Regional Final. The Western Regional Final is a festival which hosts the 4 main performance arts in a sort of concert for each. So you have band, jazz band, choir, and orchestra. 1,000 students auditioned this year from all along the Western region. The Western region is actually like our section of Connecticut, basically. It's split into 4 regions. Out of 1,430 were selected to participate. And out of those 430, 46 are from Fairfield Ludlow High School. So we present about 1/10 of all of the students going, which is, I think, the highest number of students we've had in the last 7 years. So the way they auditioned for the Western Regional Festival was by learning a piece by themselves or with the mentorship of the band or, head teachers of these departments. They started learning last year. They auditioned in November. They were told if they were participating in November after the auditions. They're now doing the concert in February, and those that did get in can also apply for the state, kind of like the all-state for sports, but it's the all-state for the performance arts afterwards, and they'll be auditioning in April for that. Here are 4 people who are actually going to be the first chairs in these performances. Sorry. We have Charithama Perry's, who's doing first chair clarinet, Liam Connie, who's doing first chair baritone, James Amazio, who's doing first chair snare drum, and Gavin Wolk, who's doing first chair mallet. Afterwards, we had during advisory last week, we were taught how to manage our time coming up to the midterms to study. This, I think, personally helped a lot. It really laid out what I'm going to be doing over the next week for studying, and a lot of students also found it, very helpful because I know a lot of students procrastinate till the last minute. They try and learn everything the day before the exam, and they don't get the results they want. And this is really going to show them how to start studying, when to start studying, and what to be doing for that class. And just ending off, we have a few athletic victories. So men's wrestling against New Canaan, we won that. That was about a week ago. Men's hockey won against Woodstock 4-7. 6-4. And Ludlow boys indoor track placed 3rd overall at the Wintergreen Invitational with a very, very good 4x4 relay in the men's team.
Wow, lots of news. Excellent. Congratulations to all involved. Are there any questions or comments from board members for our students? Mr. Peterson.
I don't know if you misspoke. The Western Region concert is Saturday. It's in Greenwich, so it's this month. It's not next month. I see Mr. Hughes in the audience confirming that. Yes. But congratulations on all the participating students. It's really a great show.
Yeah, she's actually my friend Trithma Paris, the chair for clarinet. She knew she got in, but she actually hadn't found out that she was the chair for it. And when I did, I sent her a text message. I was like, congratulations, like, I'm so happy for you. She was like, what are you talking about? I'm the chair. So, I'm sorry. I might have spoiled that. So congratulations, Trithma. They studied, it's very hard to get that good in an instrument, it's like a second language. So, very proud of her. So I'm sorry.
Fairfield's music program is always very well represented in these concerts.
It's like it. Well done. Well done, everyone. Anyone else? Okay, thank you so much for being here. Good luck on midterms and your time management and everything else that's coming up. Appreciate you being here with us on this evening. Be careful driving home, and we look forward to seeing you next time. But of course, if you would like to stay with us, you're more than welcome. But if not, good evening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item, public comment. This is the time if anyone would like to make public comment, they may come up to the table at this time, state your name and the record on agenda items.
Hello, Mick McGarry, Fairfield Education Association President. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a restful break. It's an exciting time. Got a new board, a new year, a new budget. Some folks have new hair. I think we're all looking forward to working together.
It's the same hair, it's just less.
Well, I'm here tonight to speak in support of the English curriculum that's being presented to the board. I'd like to acknowledge members of the English department who have come here tonight in this terrible, terrible weather. Hello, they're standing up. I've received texts from many other teachers who have pretty long commutes and decided to be a little cautious this evening. On another night, we'd have even more folks here today. And if you'll indulge me, I'd like to take a moment to share a personal experience that does connect to our curriculum document. This past weekend, Ward hosted the Connecticut Debate Association tournament. To answer some questions ahead of time, people are thinking, Ward actually, although we hosted, we did not compete. Due to illness, family obligations, and the need to study for midterms, we were unable to field a team. So I know folks are going to ask how we did. Well, we didn't do anything, but we will get them next time. And the topic, I know folks will be curious about that too, was this House regrets climate lawsuits. It's a typical topic. It's important enough that students have a base of knowledge about it, but vague enough that you can take either side. This is all to preface the very best part of debate and what keeps me going year after year. I decided to quit debate 15 years ago, but just keep on going. When we host, we always host in January so that graduating debaters can come back and act as judges. Outside of the pandemic years, this has been a wonderful tradition that we have grown with the ward debate team. This year, Max, if he's listening, he's not going to like this, the second best debater in ward history, came back to judge. And, you know, it was very nice of him to give up his Saturday to come back and find out what 14-year-olds think about climate change lawsuits. Max and I spent some time catching up. He lives in California now. He's very successful as a data analyst. He plays chess competitively and is really just destroying his opponents in the local pickleball club. And any Fairfield Public Schools teacher can tell you, students come back to visit often during Thanksgiving, before the winter break, or for activities such as Carillon and various concerts, etc. And I always ask how we did. How did the Fairfield Public School system do in preparing them for the future? And I'm happy to report to you, we're doing really, really good. You know, I have great sources of information direct from the students' mouths into doing well. And, you know, that was something that Max emphasized. I don't think we can take any credit for, or I can't take any credit for the pickleball success. But Max is an articulate and insightful young man, and some of that has to be credited to his time at the Fairfield Public Schools. These types of conversations are not data that can be put in a spreadsheet, but it is the reality, and it keeps our teachers teaching. To connect this to the English curriculum, first I'd like to thank the board for its time and attention to this curriculum. This document represents the work of the English department, the central office staff, and also does incorporate the notes and ideas of the board. The document before you tonight has been literally years in the making. The work on this curriculum document began prior to the pandemic and is a result of countless hours of respectful collaboration, compromise, research, open and honest discussion and debate, hard work, and reflection on best practices. And all that combined for countless writing sessions. It should be noticed that the English department is not a monolith. It took many meetings and at times uncomfortable discussions. I'm running out of time.
Sorry, yep, we are
So-
out of time.
Please support our curriculum document as written. Thank you.
Any other public comments on tonight? Okay. Thank you. Moving on to presentation. Presentation of the superintendent's proposed 2024-2025 operating budget.
Good evening. Tonight we have our presentation of the superintendent's proposed budget for fiscal year 24-25. I'd like to start by saying we'll go through as much of the slideshow as necessary. Some of the documents that will be presented that are part of the slideshow are intended for other town bodies as we move through the approval process and not necessarily need to be over exaggerated here tonight, but they will be mentioned. I want to start by saying I believe that our proposed budget is a reflection of what our Fairfield Public School students need to help reduce achievement gaps, provide high quality learning opportunities for all students, and ensure that all students have the opportunity to grow and be successful. Go through this. We all know the mission of why we're here. Now, some of the writing may not be as large, but just to go over, the 2024-25 budget reflects a continued commitment to excellence in education while responsibly addressing the financial realities facing our district. This budget, totaling $221,722,000, will represent an increase of 5.5% over this year's current budget. The increase is primarily due to fulfilling contractual obligations related to staffing, benefits, facility maintenance, mandated special education services, and accounting for a 4.46% of that, plus the 4.45% of the total increase. Our approach has been carefully balance these requirements while adjusting other allocations and implementing cost reductions wherever feasible. So as you can see, we have a nice picture here of the why. This is why we do this. This is why we're all here, is to support our staff as they provide high quality teaching and learning to our children. As I mentioned a lot last year through the budget process in preparation for this year, we knew we had an impending contract negotiation with the Fairfield Education Association. I mentioned several times throughout the process that it was imperative that we increase the salary of our teachers in order to retain high quality educators in our district. We had been falling short in meeting the competitiveness of our salary schedule for our teachers with districts in the neighboring towns. I feel that the contract that was ratified last night by the RTM gives us a competitive edge in being able to recruit high quality instructors and keep teachers here at home. We also, part of this increase is to respond to the increased needs from current year enrollment growth, be able to maintain class size and excellence in district leadership. Also we balance this with offsetting adjustments and enhanced in-house programming. As we look to the future, we try to target funds effectively, build on our existing strengths, leverage in-district programming to better serve our students, as we've seen in the past, and we'll see again as a reminder in the later slide, in our return on investment in our in-house program to meet the needs of students with special needs. And also identify multi-year opportunities for technology, facility, and equipment upgrade cycles. So again, this just is an illustration that we have the framework here that tries to balance all the pieces to the puzzle, return on investment, try to be structurally balanced, be very strategic, and limit increases in areas that we are spending unnecessarily. Obviously, this is going to be extremely hard to see from the public perspective on the screen, but the budget is summarized in 11 major categories, which we'll review in greater detail throughout the budget process over the next several weeks. The largest percent of the budget, almost 80%, is staff salary and benefits. As part of the budget planning process, we also review historical spending against current priorities to identify areas of offsets and adjustments. We also highlight these elements as we present our budget plan. So as you can see, our per pupil expenditure is something that is one of the measures in terms of the total funding committed to education that we look at relative to our peers. Our per pupil spending is in line with the average for our surrounding districts and has increased by almost 4% over the last 4 years to $21,581. In the prior year, Fairfield was 1.09% lower than the average, and in the current year, we're about 1.8% higher. So our current proposal of 5.5 is in line with area district requests and significantly lower than most of our neighboring towns that have been public with their asks. Our neighbor to our immediate south there, their request is almost 9%. Other districts like New Canaan and are up over 6.5%. So I think we're staying competitive while meeting the needs and to provide high quality service to our students and compensating our staff accordingly. So some of the major budget drivers in the budget, as we said, salaries of staff and benefits, facility and transportation needs, that's about 5.01% of the ask, and special education, which is less than half a percentage point, partially as a result of the excess cost reimbursement cap by the state legislature at 72%, while the needs of the student population continue to grow, as we're all aware of. Again, this gives us a breakdown by category of where the increases are. And as you can see, the vast majority, again, is the contractual increase of $4 million ratified last night by the RTM in the FEA contract. We have also added enrollment adjustments this current year, and we'll go through that in greater detail, totaling about $1.7 million. We're carrying forward the commitment to phase 2 of our reading program as part of the right to read legislation and our move to the new pre-K 5 curriculum. We are also requesting an enhancement to security at our high schools, which will include an additional security staff member that's hired by the Fairfield Public Schools, both at Fairfield Ward High School and Ludlow High School, and also trading out the contracted security officer at the Walter Fitzgerald campus for one that is in-house, in-district employee to maintain continuity and consistency at the Walter Fitzgerald campus, which we've had a lot of inconsistency in services being provided by the contractor, which causes some problems. And we'd like to solidify that by having our own staff member there. We're also proposing to expand the ECC program as a result of legislation passed in the last session that will prohibit or give the option this year and moving forward of parents not sending their child to school starting on September 1st rather than end of the calendar year. So that will include adding 3.2 staff members to ECC and three teachers and some paraprofessionals. We're also asking for the restoration of the grade 6 teams at the middle schools to provide a important and consistent experience for all our 6th graders heading into middle school in an important transition year. We're adding an ASL teacher as a result of expanding the curriculum to add another level of ASL at our high schools. And we're moving the data assessment coordinator from the grant onto the operating budget side. So again, what's driving the budget increases? More than 89% of the budget request, or almost a little over 4.9% of the total increase is due to contracts, enrollment needs, and insurance. And this is because we are able to adjust parts of the budget to afford these contractual and service-based needs. Similarly, the mandated special education tuition and related services make up 8% of the total budget request, or 4.5% overall of almost all of the remainder of the total budget increase for 24-25. Again, we have some key points. As we said, a little over $4 million for wage increases. This was pending approval. This was unanimously approved last night by the RTM. We'll make that adjustment in the presentation prior to the next presentation that needs to be provided. And that is a 4.58 on average for compensation for all FEA staff. Again, this lessens the gap for advancement at the high end of the pay scale. The settlement reduces the number of steps, as everyone is aware of, which will bring in teachers at a much higher pay rate. We were lagging behind almost every district in Fairfield County except one. And we are going to be more competitive across the scales over the next 3 years, which I'm very happy for and puts us in a better position as we look forward to future negotiations with our teachers. There is a change in instructional leadership that we're proposing in this budget that doesn't add much in terms of funding, but it will add a lot in terms of supervisory decision-making, curriculum, instructional practice, program development, hiring, budgeting, supervision, and evaluation is a key piece, and district curriculum alignment and implementation. We are looking to convert 5 coordinators. These are full-time teachers with release time. And 2 department liaisons, full-time teachers with additional stipend obligations, into 3 program directors that will encompass a director of world language and MLL, a director of fine and performing arts, and a director of PE and physical education, PE and health. That adds about $25,839 to the overall budget. But again, we gain a lot more in the other areas that I think will benefit all those departments as we move into the future. As I mentioned, about $188,000 is dedicated and 3.2 FTEs to expand ECC classroom programming with 3 additional classrooms and an additional site to be determined. The expansion will focus on trying to maintain as close to a 50-50 ratio of students with disabilities to non-disabled peers. The new ECC program will include some full-time offerings to our 4+-year-olds that will not necessarily move on to kindergarten as they would have in the past, given the change again in legislation. We calculated $375,000 in 4 FTE to restore the full-time the teams at the 6th grade at Roger Ludlow Middle School and Fairfield Woods Middle School. Again, I think this is just makes good sense in order, number one, to provide a better experience in the transition grade from 5th to 6th into middle school, and also provide teachers the opportunity to dive deep into teaching just one subject area like they do at Tomlinson, and just keep the middle school model clean. I think that's going to benefit our students as well as our faculty at the middle school level. Our facilities. A portion of the budget is dedicated to maintaining and upgrading school facilities, ensuring they remain safe and conducive to student learning and a better workplace for our staff. This includes compliance with indoor air quality mandates and other necessary improvements. This is outside of the capital asks that we work closely with the town. We also have funds in the budget to continue our security upgrades at Fairfield Ludlow High School and Fairfield Ward High School, and as well as baseball and backstop and dugout improvements at Fairfield Ward High School, just to name a couple of the things that are in the works as part of this budget. Again, we mentioned maintaining class size, continuing quality instruction within the classrooms for all our students, and the additional payment with our right to read and our purchase of resources that will be a linchpin into our new curriculum. We did mention some offsets. We have used a multi-year strategy to provide opportunity for realistic assessment needs for technology, school-based equipment, and facility-related maintenance projects. As we mentioned last year, we have a more systemic approach in buying laptop computers for our 6th and 9th graders that they'll be able to carry through, and then we'll be able to recycle those back down as necessary. And then we want to use a comprehensive approach. We limit some redundancy in school-based purchases and try to do the best to look at how we can consolidate our purchases and use consortium to get better pricing. And you've all seen this in recent presentation by our Department of Specialized Instructions. The cost avoidance of serving our students in district allows us to reduce our budget ask by up to $16 million. Had we not have robust and comprehensive programs here in district, then we would have to send students out of district. I think everyone can agree, we've had this conversation several times, that keeping our students here at home, providing them with the care and support from our staff is much more effective and beneficial to their growth and development than sending them elsewhere. And then we have our enrollment projection and staff changes. In the upcoming year, the demographer anticipates a slight reduction in K-5 enrollment. However, you'll see on the next slide, we have increased FTE this year in elementary related to the location of the increases and decreases to continue to keep and fulfill the board class size. As you can see, the population of K-5 is anticipated to continue to grow over the next 10 years. We're also requesting the restoration of the 2 6th grade teams in anticipation of growth in the middle schools in that same time frame as these students then enter into middle school after completing their elementary experience. The impact has been challenging with the split sections, and I think we'll all agree, if you talk to the teachers and the administrators, that it would be much more beneficial to have clean middle school teams across the district. Overall, we're adding 8 positions to the elementary level to reflect our current and projected classroom needs for the upcoming school year. Again, the addition of the teams at the 2 middle schools, the ASL teacher at the high school. We will see a reduction in high school certified staff with the conversion of those liaisons and coordinators into program directors of 3.2. So that will help with the offset. That's why we have a slight, only a slight increase in cost to the overall budget, which is almost at zero. We proposed the additional 3.2 staff to expand ECC to meet the needs of our district, as we have students that will not be moving on to kindergarten and will be staying in the ECC. We have already commitments from parents that would like to remain and not move forward. And there are additional resources that were provided in the current year for speech and language and CLC services as part of our in-district programming. The increased speech and language staff is a net increase in FTE, but not in funding, because in years prior, we shifted the funds to a contract and we had challenges hiring internal staff, which we've been able to mitigate that and able to find and recruit SLPs into the district. We also increased commitments to guidance and school counselors and psych counselors, as well as social workers in the current year due to the needs of students, and proposed transferring the data assessment coordinator position out of the Art Besser grant, as that funding will be expiring September 30th of 24. On the non-certified staff, we're adding about 16 total FTE. 7 of those are a transfer from the grant for paraeducators with no dollar impact. This is because the recently authorized salary increase was funded in the board and requires a reduction in FTE for the grant. We added 1 program director for K-5 special education and a restorative practice specialist in the current year as a result of meeting the needs of the department, and also additional support for the restorative practice specialist for the Walter Fitzgerald campus. The adjustments in finance and transportation are a net result of 0 due to the reduction of a secretary position and the creation of a provisional position in finance. Funding impact is a reduction overall, and we're proposing 3 additional security staff members, as I mentioned, for our high schools to be in-house rather than contracted services. We put a slight increase to the FTE of the communications director, just to meet some of the challenges of communications, especially after hours. Rather than give compensation time, we added a 0.2 FTE to that overall allocation. And we're reducing the headcount added to the legal services because we could not find someone with the skill set required to meet the needs of the district. Again, celebrations, as you hear at every board meeting, the wonderful achievements and honors that our students are able to achieve. We had 265 students earn the seal of biliteracy last year, 83 students selected for the CMEA Western Regional Festival, 2 schools of distinction, 3 national merit semifinalists. We had a grade A overall rating and 135 AP scholars, 75 with honors, 119 with distinction, and 83% of our AP test takers earn a score of 3+. So we have our vision of the graduate. We offer rigorous college prep courses to all our students, give them the opportunity to grow and succeed and explore any interest. As you can see in our program of studies, we offer a variety of courses for all students. 91% of our students participate in post-secondary education. We have early college experience, partnerships with the University of Connecticut, Sacred Heart University, Norwalk Community College, University of Bridgeport, as well as Quinnipiac University. And our class of 23 graduates accepted to over 145 colleges and universities nationwide. High school students engage in a variety of art, drama, music programs. As we saw at our last board meeting, we continued to update curriculum and change with the times to provide our students in the fine arts and the visual arts those courses that will propel them to be successful if they want to pursue a career in that area. And Ward and Ludlow students participate at a high level in varsity athletic teams and sub-varsity athletic teams. And we are highly competitive, as you can see, in the accomplishments of our teams and our coaches. These are some of the highlights of our Fairfield Public School athletes. I think, again, we don't always see what the impact and the number is, but we had over 2,500 students roster on our athletic teams. 446 students were college signing day participants. We had 8 FCAC championships. As everyone knows, it's a very competitive league here in Fairfield County. It's quite an accomplishment. 8 division championships, 122 all FCAC athletes, 4 state championship teams, and 53 all state recipients. So we compete at a very high level here in the district. Fairfield Public School artists are hard at work. They achieved the Congressional Art Award for District 4. Our 16 students passed rigorous AP art exams. 19 Fairfield Public School students were named Scholastic Art Award winners. Art students from across the district participate in community outreach projects through murals, exhibitions, and partnerships with local organizations. An estimated 1,000 plus visitors attended the annual townwide student art show last spring, and collaborative field trips to the Bronx Zoo for Fairfield Public School students in the arts is a great experience that we're able to provide through our budget. And again, we just mentioned, but there's so many accomplishments of our inspiring musical performances, sold out performances to our holiday concerts, and our articulation performances for our grade 5s and 8 students. Our annual Veterans Day concerts recognize our local members of the armed forces. Performances throughout the year in collaboration with the town draw huge crowds from all over the area, and participation by all our middle and high school band students in our Memorial Day parade is an exciting event for all of our musicians. Our students participate in theater productions throughout the year. Some of the accomplishments and achievements that have been recognized by our music program and our drama program is Best Communities for Music Education, which is given to top 5% of music education programs in the country nationwide. 83 students were selected again for the Western Regional Festival. 86 middle school choir students participated in a collaborative performance with the Boston Children's Chorus. 30 middle school students selected to audition to participate in the Western Regional Festival. And again, townwide programs that bring the town together and collaborate throughout the year. So we do have public meetings for the budget and scheduled for the next, we have Tuesday, the 16th, Tuesday, the 23rd. There's a typo here. We'll update that Thursday, the 25th. I also invite all the PTA to a brown bag lunch on the 18th so that we can review this with our PTA leadership. And then we will be presenting to the town, the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and the RTM on dates to be determined later on in the process. I would say questions, but there are no questions tonight, so thank you. But I'm sure there's going to be several questions coming. Yeah, I'll stay here, sure. Thank you. I like it here better. I got friends behind me, I think, right?
All right. Does anyone have any questions on the presentation at this time? Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
Just if you could, for the sake of anyone hearing this for the first time, could you remind everyone exactly what happened with what was the middle school decision made, which had involved a cost savings in terms of that sixth grade team structure, and what it is that you're looking to go back to and why?
Well, I'm looking to go back to full teams. First and foremost, I think in a transition year, we need to provide students and teachers with the opportunity to make sure that students make that transition smoothly. I think it's very difficult right now that we have two schools that have sixth grade teams where teachers have to teach multiple classes rather than just teach the one content area. I think it's very difficult. And I know it happens if you run in other districts, a K-6 building, that the teacher would be teaching the entire curriculum. But I think we have the opportunity here, given that we have a middle school structure, that we should have the integrity of the middle school structure afforded across all three buildings at all three grade levels. So that's my rationale. I think it'll help the teachers be able to prepare better lessons and to prepare. It's got to be a draining day when you're trying to prepare, also in that collaborative effort as a team to be able to plan projects and interdisciplinary lessons. I think would be a lot smoother as well.
And could you speak to the feedback you've gotten on this year?
I think that once it was presented that I would be including this in my budget, the middle school principals and assistant principals were extremely excited and appreciative. I think it was something that they were hoping for at some point as well.
Excellent. Can I go ahead?
I have a feeling there are going to be a lot more questions about this, and obviously you've already spoken generally to it, but I was hoping you could speak a little bit more. I find very exciting, but I'd love to hear more of the thinking behind those three new program coordinators in terms of what that's going to bring to it. How is this a plus? How is this a great investment?
Well, again, I think right now there's a lot of disjointedment, I'll say, given the fact that we have some folks that teach a reduced class load and then have other responsibilities to plan professional development, to look at curriculum, to coordinate departments. Also is a little, I think, challenging when we're colleagues and how direction is given, how direction is taken. On PD days, I think to have somebody that can coordinate meaningful professional development, not that it's not happening, but I think it could be more robust, that can lead the department. These are integral pathways and content areas that I think should and deserve the leadership that the others do. I also think it'll give a little bit more supervisory role where they can get in, they can help evaluate teachers, provide feedback since they are the experts in their content area, and relieve some of the opportunity here and that the house principals to reduce a little bit of the demands that they have and having to supervise such a large load of staff members and have some more collaboration with people in the field that have that content area expertise. So.
Thank you. And I'm especially appreciative of it because I've been asking you for a few years about the leadership of the ELL program. And so this being added, I'm very appreciative. So thank you. The only other question I had immediately was the reduction of 1.0 for the family and community liaison.
Well, that was shifted from a non-certified staff to a certified staff. So it's the school counselor that's currently filling that role. So we hired, instead of a non-certified person, a certified person who currently serves in that role, has a little bit more of a robust skill set and can meet the needs of the parents and the students that they serve. So it's really just a shift in what qualifications we looked for in the hiring after we had a change in staff.
But the fact that it's only a 0.4, I had missed that it was at the bottom of that column as in there. But so how I see the reduction of the 1.0, where's the 1.0 add?
McKinley and Tomlinson should be split.
Okay. I'll look at more.
We'll take a closer look to make sure it's lined
No,
up.
I'm pretty sure I'm missing the
Yeah.
the numbers. So thank you.
No, absolutely not. Very vital to. Possibly still partially grants because of the Title I funding, correct. But you're.
Anyone else for tonight? Okay. At your table, you have a memo from the superintendent. I just want to go through this a little bit with, especially for new board members. We do have a process on how we proceed with questions on the budget. You should have all received an email from IT today with a link to what we have as a Google Doc. The first deadline for entering questions is this Sunday. And as you can see, on January 16th, there are a series of sections that we will cover on that date and a series of sections that we will cover on the 23rd. I think the important thing to know here is that you're looking at the pages of those sections for your questions in your Google Doc, as well as the accompanying detail pages. Of course, you are free to read the whole budget tonight, put all your questions in for the entire thing if you wish to, but just what is required will be those sections for the 16th. So there's obviously no pressure to do the whole thing if you don't want to. All right. Happy to help along as the way if there's any questions on this, but I just want to make sure everyone's really clear on what they need to do for Sunday. Of course, reach out if you have any difficulty. Once you get in there, I think it'll really make sense to you. There's a drop down, you put your name, the page number, enter your question. So it becomes pretty intuitive, hopefully. But if you have any troubles, reach out and we'll assist in any way that we can. Okay. Any questions on process? Yes, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
So both to you and through the chair to Mrs. Laborious and to Mr. Testani, I submitted my question of requesting for the third or fourth or fifth, I forget, year in a row, the format of that Google Sheet that it.
We're working on that. Yes.
Okay, because I notice here, I would ask that the agenda to the chair do likewise. I mean, it is a little bit misleading to any member of the public wondering what we're discussing, for example, where it says instructional services 54 to 58 and does not include for the guidance of the public what the support pages are for each of these. And I think the agenda, it's not enough to have the category. We can't assume people are as comfortable with the book as we are. If they could please list all the support pages so we knew the superficial level and then the deep dive that we're doing per meeting, which is what I am hoping is on the Google Sheet.
If I may. Yes. So it was a good question. One of the challenges is that we typically present the budget in 3 different ways. One is by program, one is by school and department, and then the third is by the executive summary. So I'm happy to get an update through the chair to the public and to the board. What we've done is broken up the executive summary into components. So for example, where you have section 1 that's personnel, we're also subdividing to say, okay, special education, so by the category. So for example, in instructional services, with special education and general instruction, we've split that into special education and general instruction. We want to be clear that it does align with the budget book, because that way, the feedback we did get from the board last year was that they did like that they could reference the pages, but acknowledging that concern, which does make sense that some of the categories combine multiple areas, we've further divided the executive summary by those areas. So if you're asking a question on special education, you'll see a tab for special education. If you're asking a question on transportation, there's a tab for transportation. If you're asking a question, for example, on instruction, there's a tab for instruction. I welcome additional feedback through the chair to me if you'd like to see it in a.
I just want to make sure this memo is correct.
It is.
Right now, right. Okay, so I think what you're asking is that you don't want you want the specifics of the accompanying details. That's all added to the agenda, basically.
Yeah, and we can get that to you.
Yeah, that's easy. I mean, it's in the budget book, so that should be easy enough to pull out.
Yeah,
so.
And it's part of the Google Doc.
Just so you know, when you get to these sections, it does say accompanying detail is on such and such pages, or it should normally. So don't be afraid.
Yeah, feel free to ask any questions, but thank you.
So what we did, because Monday is a holiday, the Google Doc will shut down at 8 a.m. on Monday. So for the night owls, that you have until 8 a.m. on Monday to submit the question. So
And I'm not looking at me. Nope. Be done tomorrow. No, just in terms of also, I just want to advocate on behalf of the board too, just in terms of getting the questions back. I think that we appreciate if there's some time to actually review those before we're sitting at the table. So I know Monday you're going to close it at 8 o'clock. I don't know how the board feels, but at least at some point, noon or something on Tuesday before, so that we can actually read it before we get here. Is that possible or in the planning?
I think so. I don't think there's going to be questions that will be difficult to answer given proposed budget.
I like your optimism. All right. Sure.
Are we going to see other questions so they're not redundant, or?
Yes, everyone has access to the Google Doc, so you'll see, like, if I ask a question on page 85 and you have the exact same question, you don't have to ask it again. That's kind of how this all started, in terms of that. Okay. Everyone clear? Good. All right, here we go. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. All right, moving on to old business, approval of UI energy projects at Burr and Walter Fitzgerald. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the UI energy projects at Burr and Walter Fitzgerald. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Peterson, seconded by Mrs. Guernsey. Any discussion?
I'm sorry to surprise you with this. I was trying to catch you earlier, but it just came to my attention last minute. We're going to ask that you table this vote until a meeting to be determined. We're working with the purchasing department to update the contract and to redo the contract. It turns out the vendor that is listed from UI is not on the state contract any longer. So we are working to get a new vendor on board for this project.
Sorry, Mr. Krasnov?
Is there no way we can get the savings for past projects too that was requested? The savings for past projects that we've done like this? Before the next vote?
We can work on that.
We have a motion on the table, so what we would need is an amendment to the motion to postpone to a date certain, if somebody would mind making that motion. I mean, how much time, do you want it indefinite, or do you want this to a date certain?
We're not sure at this time how long we're going to need, so
So do you want the motion withdrawn?
Yes, if we can withdraw it, and then we'll put it back before you once we have the updated contract.
I think technically, once the motion has been made and seconded, it belongs to the table. It no longer belongs to me. I can move to remove the motion.
Withdraw.
So I'll
Yeah.
withdraw the motion.
Okay.
But then somebody has to second it, and I think we have to vote.
Yes. Mr. Krasnov will second the motion to withdraw the motion, and let's all vote to withdraw the motion for the time being. Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, sorry we didn't catch up.
Thank
I
you.
didn't know. Okay. All right, thank you. Approval of course curriculum, Guitar Studio. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the course curriculum for Guitar Studio. Can I get a motion, please? Mrs. Flynn? Second? Mrs. Rinaldi? Any discussion? No? Take it out to public comment. Any public comment on this item? All right, back to the board. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Sorry. I'm so sorry, Mr. Lee. I know you're back there. Thank you. All in favor? Are you voting aye, Mr. Lee? I heard you say yes, but just if you'd like to say your name for the record, please, because we can't see you, I don't think.
Jason Lee votes yes.
Thank you. All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Approval of course curriculum, music theater explorations. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the course curriculum for music theater explorations. Can I get a motion, please? Mrs. Flynn, seconded by Mr. Asa. Any discussion? Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
And this might very well fall under the realm of assuming if it passes, this new program director for fine arts. Just wanted to reiterate my one concern about this course, which again, I think sounds like an amazing course. That's not at all what my question is. My question is that we are coming up with courses which appeal to students who do not normally partake
in this field, who aren't normally in the music department, aren't performing. This is the kind of course, to me, that is going to appeal to those students who are already very much, in the thrall of the fine arts. And I'm not sure that it has a guitar. On the other hand, I actually think as being something that's going to appeal to a lot of kids who otherwise might not, who won't be searching around for what can I do to fulfill this requirement. And this course being added, again, I think is tremendous, but I don't think fulfills that niche. And I just hope, that that's something that staff continues to keep abreast of, whether it's through student government, talking to students or whatever, just trying to find those areas where the department will be able to readily draw and satisfy the interests of students who, again, now have a new, very explicit requirement, and we need to make sure that we have the courses that will help them satisfy it and that it's something that's enjoyable, because these department offerings are tremendous, but we do have to appeal to students who otherwise are not drawn there.
Mrs. Guernsey.
I'm thrilled to see this addition, and I think it would be interesting to collect that information as people will hopefully register for that course. And I think the fact that it's non-performance based hopefully will be something that will appeal to those students.
Anyone else? All right, we'll take it out to the public. Any public comment on this item? All right, back to the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Lee, can you please state your name for the record?
Jason Lee votes aye. Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, adoption of textbook musicals, the definitive illustrative story. Recommended motion that the Board of Education adopt textbook musicals, the definitive illustrative story by Nathaniel Hurwitz, second edition, 2021. Can I get a motion, please? Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, seconded by Mr. Asa. Any discussion? Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly?
Very, very minor detail, but I thought part of our discussion had been that this is not considered a textbook. Are we labeling it a textbook just because of our policies, so that we approve textbooks even though this is not a textbook? I just wanted to clarify that. Or is the book being viewed differently now?
I think it was being considered a textbook, but
I thought that was part of what we discussed last meeting, was that this is not considered a textbook.
Although it does not look like a textbook, we had deemed it a textbook because the majority of the class, well, all of the class will be using it as the core resource of that class.
Okay, any other questions? All right, take this out to the public. Any public comment? All in favor?
Jason Lee votes yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes unanimously. All right, new business, authorization for BOE Chair to execute Form SCG-042 for the North Stratfield and Holland Hill roof replacement projects. Recommended motion that the BOE Chair be authorized to execute Form SCG-042 for the North Stratfield and Holland Hill roof replacement projects. Can I get a motion, please? Mrs. Flynn, seconded by Mr. Peterson. This was not something I believe that we asked before. Is there any, this is just a form that the state needs for a reimbursement. Is that basically the gist of this?
That is correct. It's a formality form that we need to get signed by the chair.
Okay. Any questions? All right, take it out to the public. Any public comment on this item? All right, back to the board. All in favor?
Jason Lee votes yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right, changes to the health and physical education curriculum.
Good evening, everybody. Again, James Evajancic, Chief Academic Officer. And this evening, a presentation was given to you that I will present from tonight in response to a memo that was sent out on December 22nd in our Board of Education Friday packet. So this will provide more information on this change, and I will take questions at the end. This plan for health and physical education does not change the approved curriculum, but implements it in a different manner. Currently, for the public's knowledge, our students take a quarter credit of physical education and health each year.
that they are in high school to meet the high school graduation requirements of 1 credit in each area. Our curriculum implementation change will meet this graduation requirement by offering 2 half-credit courses in PE and health to be taken in one of the first 2 years of high school, freshman or sophomore, and one in the second 2 years of high school, junior or senior year. For the next school year, 24-25, we will continue to offer the quarter credit course for our current 9th and 11th grade students so that they can accumulate the additional 0.25 credit and earn the 0.5 or the 1.0 for the graduation requirements. Physical education teachers' courses will be scheduled as usual. Students on the first day of class will choose what we're calling a rotation they will elect to take. An example of this will be provided in the upcoming slides. All students throughout high school will register for Physical Education 1 or Physical Education 2 consistent with Health 1 and Health 2. So our current health courses are Health 9, 10, and 11, and 12. And again, those are our quarter credit courses taken with the corresponding years there, freshman through senior. The current 9th and 10th grade course, as you see, will transfer into Health 1. Our 11th and 12th will go to Health 2 and will be offered at a 0.5 credit once successfully completed. To reiterate, the curriculum of these 4 courses remains the same. They are just combined. There are no changes in the board's approved curriculum. However, the delivery is altered from what we call in our schedule a mini, which is a half of a block, to a full block for the half-year course. Well, although this one is a little difficult to see, physical education follows the same pattern but is a bit more complex. It will follow the same attributes as health education. Students will again earn 1.0 credits by enrolling in 2 half-credit courses in either 9th and 10th grade or in 11th and 12th grade, one of those 2 years. The difference with PE is in its structure. Unlike health, the physical education department offers elective courses as students become juniors and seniors. Courses such as, and these are just examples, yoga and backyard games are options to select in lieu of the typical physical education 11 and 12. You can see the list on the slide here under includes the offerings that is included in our 11th and 12th grade programming. In 24 and 25 course offerings, the district will offer 2 distinct classes for physical education. That would be, again, PE1 and PE2, with PE1 being in 9th and 10th, and PE2 being in 11th or 12th. For PE2, the electives will be incorporated in each class throughout what we're calling the rotation system. And here's an example of this on the following slide with some assumptions built in. Meaning that 3 teachers are teaching, for example, during period 1, that can obviously be altered. Each teacher would offer up to 4 rotations in the semester. Students would select based on offering. So I've only put yoga in teacher 1s because that is one of our electives that is highly sought. So that would most likely be an offering that is offered at every rotation because kids want it all the time. In the appendix here, you'll see the requests versus the enrollment. There are other 11th and 12th grade PE electives that are not as highly sought, which may not need multiple rotations in each semester. So a student would essentially come in and say, I'm choosing the PE2 elective of Yoga 1 and Yoga 2, and they would then be enrolled in Teacher 1's classes for that semester. Or perhaps they may choose something else that's listed there, and I've listed all of them, assuming that there's a need for all of them, and they would then be enrolled on that first day in that course, again titled PE2. Just for benefit of the presentation, on the next 2 slides, I've offered what a current schedule looks like. And again, these vary by students, but what it currently looks like for a freshman and a senior. The 2 days obviously repeat for days 3 and 4 with the block schedule. You'll see in that period 2, day 1 is where Health 9 lies, and in that day 2, third or fourth row down is where PE 9 lies. It is generally paired, as it's a mini, which again means half of that block. It is usually paired with a study hall, although that there's other options as well for some students. And it says elective there because remember, these are half-year courses for the most part, so something else has to line up with it. In the new schedule, this would be a half-year full block, so you wouldn't see the study hall paired with it. It would just be, for example, Health 1 or PE 1 for a freshman for that half year, and it would open up electives moving forward. I did not include health enrollments here because everybody takes the same sequence with that. So they are not included in your packet because there's not many options with it. This is again for your information only in terms of the 23-24 enrolled and requested, which is what is divided by the backslash there. You may notice that some elective courses in PE are more frequently requested, as I noted earlier, like our yoga class, or yoga 1 class, I should say, and others are infrequently requested. You'll see coaching, for example, has few students at both schools who requested it. Lastly, just as a note, due to scheduling, what could become a singleton class, requests cannot always be honored for students. You may notice that self-defense, for example, had about half of its requests satisfied. With the new schedule, we may be able to get more students into the elective or the area that they want in that 11th and 12th grade class. With that said, I'll conclude the presentation and be available for any questions.
Okay, open it up to the board. Mr. Peterson.
Hi, thanks. Let me see if I understand correctly what's going on here. Currently, we have kids take quarter credit every year of health and PE. What you're proposing to do is to chunk those two together into half credit segments that they will only take during 2 years of their high school experience.
That is accurate.
So the one fundamental question I have about this is, are we prepared to have a system where children do not have some physical activity in every year of their high school experience?
From a physical education class, that would be accurate as well. When you say prepared, I'm not, are we prepared, meaning are there other offerings? Can you just explain what you mean by that?
Well, we require them to take a physical education course of some type every year currently as a quarter credit. Going forward, they will be able to knock out all of their physical education requirements in only 2 of their years. In 2 of their years, they will need no physical education requirement at part of their schedule at all.
That's accurate. So 2 out of the 4 years, they would have a physical education class. That is not atypical of how PE is offered throughout the area. So I did, survey the program of studies of Fairfield County towns, 19 of them, just to see what was going on before we went into this. About 13 of 19 of the surrounding towns offer the 0.5. Some offer a 1.0. So to your point, in those districts, the students knock it out in 1 year and don't have it for 3. And about 4 of them, they offer a 0.25 or a quarter, or some other variation of it. Some school districts do a 0.125 because their blocks just work differently.
So that's really good to know. I appreciate that context. I'll have to think about the implications of that. My other basic question, this is probably a minor issue you can wave off. From the health curriculum, we do things on kind of an age-appropriate basis. Will we need to adjust the curriculum at all? I say we're continuing with the same curriculum, but are there things that are, I guess you're only kind of advancing the curriculum by 1 year by this model.
Yeah, so we don't plan on altering the content and the skills that you guys have, that the board has approved. The teachers are working on implementation for that very reason. It was specific to the grades. And one of the compromises we had versus thinking about a 1.0 course was that the topics would be better offered for juniors and seniors and some for freshmen and sophomores in that 0.5 realm.
Mrs. Guernsey?
Yes, I was wondering if you could speak to some of the scheduling advantages that this would bring for our students.
Sure. As you guys are well aware, every year we seem to have more and more requirements placed upon our students to graduate, right? So we have financial literacy coming up for our current freshman class, and there's others within there. We wanted to make sure when we went into this that we could open up as many advantages as we can for our high school students so that they could take electives and other courses of interest in addition to those things that are prescribed by statute and the graduation policies as well. So we do believe that by having the classes done in 2 years versus over the 4, it will open up periods throughout for other interests to be explored.
Thank you. And when students are planning their schedules, is there a recommendation for them taking this in certain years? Like, should it be 10, 11 or 9, 12? I mean, is there any kind of recommendation from the guidance office about how this would best work?
We'd have to look at the counselors would have to look at each student's schedule, right? But flexibility is inherent in this. So they may say, I want to hold off and take it in 10th grade, or I want to get it done in 9th because I want something else to go in 10th grade. So there is flexibility built in.
Thank you. And my last question is just thinking about a student that might exist that does only access physical education through our classes. Would they be able to elect to take an additional class that was outside of the required? Is that open to them to do so, like more than 1 credit in physical education?
Yeah, I don't see why that would be a problem. I assume so if they want to do after 11th grade, take another PE and go through another rotation, I don't see why.
Right, they loved it so much in 11th grade, they can't wait to do racket sports again.
Understood, yes.
Mr. Krasnov?
I just want to say I have some of the same concerns as Mr. Peterson, especially for the students that aren't student athletes. Just want to make sure we know that they may have a gap in their physical education each year that they're not doing it.
Thank you.
Mr. Lee, do you have a question?
Yes. So for a student that wants to continue, let's say, take another PE course outside those 2 years, what will it fall under towards their graduation requirements?
I'd imagine it would go under an elective at that point in terms of how many they have to complete for the 25.
Anything else, Mr. Lee?
If we're gonna stop PE, let's say after 2 years, what are we expecting students to pick up towards graduation? Will they have to? Are we expecting them to pick up another elective or an art or towards the graduation requirements?
Could be any and all of those classes that we offer in our program of study. So it might be an elective, it might be a tech ed class, it might be a business class. It could be even classes within our core areas, especially in 11th and 12th that have electives like our English department or social studies department. So it is wide open.
So it actually would help boost the overall student's GPA and weight it differently when applying to colleges.
That would of course depend on which class was selected, meaning which level it's in, like if they've taken an AP class versus a college prep class, and of course what score they got, and that determines the weight that would affect their GPA.
Thank you.
Mrs. Flynn?
Hi there. Thank you for the presentation. Just when I'm looking at the enrollment for this current year, there seems to be, just first off, and if you want to speak to it, a little bit of a discrepancy between Fairfield Ludlow and Fairfield Ward in terms of enrollment versus requested. And I'm just curious, do you anticipate that continuing to be a trend and that impacting students' ability to fill that elective now that it's only a 0.25, not a 0.5?
So it would be a 0.5, not a 0.25.
Yes. But do you see yourself being able to enroll all these classes now that students only kind of get one shot versus maybe a more variety of electives to choose from?
So again, the electives are still going to be offered, but they're not going to be offered by title. So students will be enrolled in a class called, for example, PE2, and then choose the elective once they're in it, versus saying self-defense is only offered period 3. I also want to take AP Chemistry, which is also, I'm making all this up, period 3, and therefore I have to pick between one of them. The PE class could then be offered somewhere else.
That's very helpful as a parent of a 6th grader and 2 3rd graders. Thank you for the insight.
Can the PE and the health be taken concurrently?
Meaning one in semester 1 and one in semester 2, or both in semester 1?
Both in semester 1.
Yes, it would take up 2 blocks, but of course.
I'm just wondering if they can run concurrently. I'm just thinking about all the logistics. Okay. Anyone else? Mrs. Maxon Kennelly?
Just confirming, because for example, when you look at the Ward PE numbers, the number of students who were not enrolled when requested, when that's a graduation requirement, I'm unclear on what happened with them.
The administration and the counselors would work to find something else in there. So you may have requested to go to Yoga 1 and it was not open, so you were placed in PE 12, for example. So you might have fallen into another class in terms of.
And any idea of what, because that coaching class sounded amazing when we were looking at it. Any sense of what happened with that?
I don't. I'd have to ask our PE coordinator if she has any insight on that.
Thanks.
Just going to follow up on that. For the Ward Yoga 2, is that a typo, 5 out of 51, or is that correct?
I believe it is correct. I've checked them. I will triple check it. But I believe that is accurate.
So I'm just curious, if 51 people requested that, why didn't it run?
Could have been that it did not fit in the schedule against all the other classes.
So there's a possibility that you could choose a rotation under this process that you don't actually get.
I mean, that's always a possibility, right? That, there's 3 teachers running 4 rotations and you say, I want X, Y, and Z, and it does not happen similar to this, but we do think that it would be more flexible than what we currently have.
Okay, anyone else? No? Oh, sorry, Mrs. Guernsey.
So I was just thinking, quick question about grading. Are you assigned to the same teacher then for the whole, so you'd follow the teacher through their activities, you wouldn't rotate to a different teacher you just.
So once the rotation is chosen, they'll be logged to that teacher in Infinite Campus for gradebook purposes. So if there's a switch, they'd be then logged to somebody else at that point for the grade to be submitted.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for coming and clarifying some of this for everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. First reading of grade 6 through 12 ELA curriculum.
Good evening, Janine Goss, Executive Director, Pre-K-12 Literacy. I want to first thank you for this opportunity to spend some time at tonight's meeting to review the status of our ELA curricula in grades 6 through 12. And we do want to thank the teachers and the administrators who did come out tonight to support the work that has been done. I do want to say, though, while we recognize that, writing a homegrown curricula is never perfect, especially being that we're not a publishing company. And even then publishing companies are not perfect either. We did propose these with the input of all of the teachers from our secondary level. We also recognize for the board and for the public that it may be very difficult to see what the end result would be of this process because these documents do not show you the assessments. They do not show you the tasks. They do not show you the writing. They do not show you the learning plan. But once this step of curricula is approved, we will then get very busy working on what implementation will look like. And that is in the implementation guides. Implementation guides will include a variety of assessments. They will include a common summative assessment, I should say, at the end of each unit. They will also include formative tools so that we can evaluate student progress during instruction. The learning plans will also include items such as core instructional practices. They will also include culturally responsive practices and vertically aligned from grade to grade in the areas of vocabulary development, study skills, instructional facilitation techniques, scaffold for diverse learners, as well as ways to continue to advance our learners. So again, all of this is not present in this document, and that's, I think, what also makes it very difficult to see this process through. All of these efforts will help ensure alignment and coherence from grade to grade and from level to level, as well as provide teachers with flexibility to best meet the needs of each and every one of the students in their care. So while there may be disagreement in terms of some of the components among our stakeholders of the proposed curricula, we want to ensure you that we are very dedicated and committed to seeing this process through and working on the implementation that will support each and every student to reach potential. So in an effort to sort of summarize the recent changes that have been made, we prepared just a few bullets per grade level and then into the electives. And as my colleagues help to speak to these slides, they will introduce themselves at that time. What I may want to suggest is that we go grade by grade and maybe we present that slide and then we do questions and answers. Or if you prefer, we can go through the entire presentation, which doesn't take very long at all. And then you can ask questions afterwards.
I think we just go through the presentation and then we'll open it up if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Julie Heller, the Program Director for 612 ELA. So first, we wanted to highlight a few of the changes that were made to all of the documents since the first presentation back in November. So we adjusted the language of good readers to skilled readers. We added at least one required text to each of the full year courses and indicated content alignment where that was applicable. Where there were no credits present in some of the high school courses, we made sure we included those. Any prerequisites that were not correctly noted have been adjusted, and language around the length of units has been changed for consistency. And finally, we recognize that there are a number of typos that still exist in the documents, which will be corrected prior to submission of the document for your vote next week. So for grade 6, we spent some time making sure that we aligned the author biographies with those whose works we were studying. We made some cross-curricular connections more explicit. They were already a part of the work that was happening in 6th grade, but we wanted to highlight that for you. We included some familiar fairy tales as a way of grounding students in that particular unit, so they had a place to build from. We changed some of the titles to better reflect the units, and we emphasized grammar support and mini lessons in the course overview. We also added some language to emphasize that research is indeed an important part of this course as well as all of our courses. So you'll see that language come up on each of the slides. For grade 7, we made sure we included some core Greek myths, and this would also include looking at the structure of Greek mythology, an understanding of who the Greek gods and goddesses are and that sort of thing. Some of the myths that were included in the document include Arachne and Prometheus. We emphasized connections to social studies where applicable, and we clarified that the common text for grade 7 is The Outsiders. We also added, again, language to emphasize that research is an important part of the course. In grade 8, We revised the overview to align with grade 9. So you will see that in each of the 3 courses, grade 8, 9 CP, and 9 honors. This was done to really emphasize and highlight how students are being prepared in 8th grade to be successful as high school freshmen in either 9 CP or in 9 honors. We added excerpts from A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare to the poetry unit. And that was really intended to give them a taste of Shakespeare before they experience it in full when they hit 9th grade. We also reinstated the interviewing process and the expectations in Unit 4, and this would include conducting a live interview or in-person interview. And again, the emphasis on research. Grade 9, we did correct the typo that that talked about the number and complexity of text. I believe that came up at the last meeting. We had reversed those numbers. That has now been corrected. We revised the course overviews again to help reveal that alignment that exists between grades 8, 9 CP, and 9H. We updated the citation expectations to MLA only, and as well as the unit titles. We eliminated one text from the text list and updated the text for Unit 3. And finally, we revised the essential questions in Unit 4, and again, the emphasis on research. Oh, I think there's one more, 8, 9, right? So here's a slide that we wanted to share with you to kind of highlight what are the differences moving up from grade 8 into grade CP, or 9 CP and 9 honors. So in grade 8, there's a lot of emphasis on deep analysis of text, but a lot of that is also guided by the teacher. When you move into grade 9 CP, there's a mix of guided experiences as well as independent experiences. And then 9 honors, we're expecting students to be able to engage in deep analysis more independently. There's a mix in grade 8 of brief and longer writing pieces, formal writing pieces. Some of them go through the full writing process, some of them are on demand. That's similar to grade 9, except that there's more of an emphasis on preparing pieces to be submitted for the portfolio. So there is more of an emphasis on process writing pieces for both 9 CP and 9 honors. There are 4 full-length works that students will read, at least 4 in grade 8. 9 CP has 5 as an expectation, and there are 6 full-length works at least read by students in 9 honors. And I would say finally, the content connections exist. In 8th grade, for example, when the students are reading Night by Elie Wiesel, they are also exploring World War II and the Holocaust. Whereas in 9th grade, some of the content connections might revolve around, say, the Iranian Revolution, which is central to understanding Persepolis, or Jim Crow laws, which is certainly an important part of reading To Kill a Mockingbird.
So thank you. I'm Jenny Ingram, and I'm an English teacher, and I am the department liaison at Fairfield Ludlow High School. So for grade 10, we updated the challenging and grade level text lists. We added language to emphasize that research is an important part of the course, and we will change the phrase inverse relationship between the acquisition of knowledge and loss of innocence to inverse relationship between the acquisition of knowledge and innocence.
Hello, I'm Ross Bilvick, English teacher and ward liaison. We revised the essential questions for English 11. We added the Awakening and Walden to the challenging text list. We added the list of text expectations, including time periods and genres. We added more canonical text to units. We added the credit to 11 CP. And like you heard before, we added language to emphasize that research is an important part of the course.
So for grade 12, we eliminated A Long Way Gone from the text list, and this was really to avoid duplication. That text is also on the list for 9th grade students. We streamlined the list of core text in each unit to avoid repetition, and revised Unit 3's overview for clarity. And again, there is an emphasis on research in this full year course. The electives There are many of them, but the duration for the portfolio unit, which is included in each of those electives, was changed to 1 semester. We had previously relied on the template, and we've stepped away from that and made that adjustment. Film was accidentally omitted during the first presentation, but it has been restored to its rightful place. Edgar Allan Poe has been entered into the author list for the Dark Chronicles True Crime course. Ethics and reliable journalism were emphasized in the advanced journalism course, and there are actually 8 new courses to consider because several of them had not previously been approved by the Board of Education. So Know Thyself, the Literature of Well-Being is one of those courses. I would remind everyone that that's a very popular course. Acting 1 and 2 and Performance 3 and 4 were also put on this list because they did not have a previously approved curriculum. The Wide World of Sports Literature is a new course. Dark Chronicles, the Literature of True Crimes and Mysteries, also new, and Advanced Journalism.
Okay, that's all we have for you right now, but we are here to answer any and all questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you for the updates. Okay, Mr. Krasnoff.
Thank you, and thank you for all the teachers that did tremendous work on this project. I know it probably wasn't easy and took a lot of time and effort. I do have some personal concerns about some of the middle school stuff, so maybe you guys can clarify some questions I have. I have some concerns about the vigor of the text itself. For example, in grade 6, New Kid is the main read. I believe it's like a third grade to 7th grade read. So, we're offering it to 6th graders as their main read. It's kind of, in my mind, not vigorous enough, but again, you guys are the experts. In addition, it's a lot of short stories, fables, and whatnot as part of the read. They're coming from 5th grade, which we just did. The curriculum had some decent sized books to go from that to a chapter of Harry Potter, some short stories, some fable. I would like to see a little more substance, just personally. In addition to that, I do like how in 7th grade you are going to talk about, a little bit of Greek history with Greek mythology. I would love to see going forward, maybe doing some more interdisciplinary, like when we look at the social studies. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially 6 through 8, to try to parallel what they're reading to what they're learning in social studies, whether it's time period appropriate or author appropriate. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Questions? Mrs. Lynn.
Hi there. Excuse me as I was trying to write out my question so I could toggle behind screen so I could get the exact page number. But this is referenced a few times in the document for 9 through 12. Specifically, I'm just going to note it. I think it's on page 13 for 9 college prep. So just so you guys have reference. Can you just speak to the blue lined? It says core text that teachers have access to. Now that is crossed out and it says that are aligned with the district. Is that indicating that the teachers don't all have access to the books? Can you guys just speak to that just so that we have some clarity, because it's referenced in those 9 through 12 courses several times?
I think that was changed throughout the entire document, wasn't it?
It was changed. I think there was a concern in terms of the way that it was initially written, that nothing was required, that everything was a choice and that nothing would be necessarily read by the.
Thank you. Somehow I missed it between our Google Docs, but I appreciate it because I was a little confused between the red and the blue and the strikeout. So I appreciate the clarification.
We also had to make sure that there was a core set of text that the district supplied that teachers would have access to in order to pull from. So that was the initial intention as well.
As we head into budget, that's
Yes,
an important thing to
exactly.
be noted of. So thank you.
Mr. Peterson.
I really just have a couple of questions and some comments. I do appreciate this other additional look at the material, and I appreciate your forbearance in dealing with all of our questions about this. We, as much as you, are trying to get it right. I do have kind of a specific question in the introduction to 7th grade ELA. There's an addition that says all seventh graders will receive direct instruction around 3 novels in both whole class and book club formats. Those aren't specified anywhere. So is that going to change from year to year? Is there core list that they are going to pull from? It just seems to kind of hang out there.
So I think that the titles are specific in each of the units. So I think it was really referencing the fact that students would be getting support and guidance as they read text in each of the units.
All right, so there's not going to be a standard set of 3 texts that's going to...
The only standard text right now, full-length text for grade 7 is The Outsiders.
Okay, that's fine. It was difficult for me to get those two things aligned. Literature of well-being. Ms. Maxon Kennelly mentioned this last time we talked about this, and I took a close look at it. I really don't see how this belongs in the English curriculum. And as far as looking through the curricular documents, none of the course essential questions or enduring understandings are really language or literature based. And some of the things that you're dealing with in that topic are, podcasts and TED Talks. It seems far away from, I understand that there is reading and that we are trying to get students to read certain things and take messages from them, but we do that in almost every subject. That's not unique to English. So I don't understand why this belongs here. I didn't think that I was going to agree with her, but I kind of completely do after having gone through it with a little more care. So if you could speak to that.
So this course is a unique course, and I think it's a wonderful course, honestly, and that's why so many students are taking it and why it is so popular. If you look at the course materials in the overview of the course, there are 2 full-length works of literature that are read in both schools by all the students who take the class. And then there are a number of shorter pieces that are informational text, and they also spend a lot of time reading poetry. And yes, they are listening to things like TED Talks and podcasts and this sort of thing. So they're getting really a wonderful variety of reading experiences that I actually think is very reflective of our standards. So if you were to look at the standards for, say, 12th grade, which is where students are taking this class, there's an indication that students should be reading 30% in the world of literature and 70% of informational text. So this is actually a class that is supporting that reading of informational text for students as they are seniors and ready to move out into the world and take on college or career.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. That as an educational standard, as a goal, they should be reading as a 70-30 split. But in ELA setting or just in general?
Well, that's indicated by the Common Core state standards for ELA.
All that granted, and understanding this is a popular course, but why is it not a health course? We read works of literature in other disciplines, don't we? I mean, in the social studies curriculum, there are occasions to read excerpts from fiction or poetry. That doesn't make them English courses. I guess I don't understand why this is here and not in health.
I really can't speak to what constitutes a health class. I'm just not trained in that discipline, but I know that this is a class that is very much focused on and structured around the ELA standards. So as such, students are reading, they are writing, they are engaging in discussions, they are engaging in inquiry, they do an independent inquiry project, and they're listening to each other, and it's just an incredibly important class that happens to be focused on students' social and emotional well-being and development.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to take anything away from the value of the course. It does not quite sit right with me in being in this bucket, but I'm not at all suggesting that we get rid of it or we adjust it. If it's doing its job, that's great. I want to end with one minor point, based on the discussion that we had at the last meeting. I'm fighting the last war here, I guess. So I really want to go into too much detail. The words analyze or analysis occur 692 times in this 6 to 12 document. The words beauty or beautiful appear 23 times. The word love appears once in reference to sports and athletes. I would want the notion of art to be better threaded in the instruction of English as a spoken language and as a literary language. I'll leave that out there.
Mrs. Lynn.
Can I just ask a little bit of a follow-up to Mr. Peterson and Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly's concerns? You state that they said that it's a very popular course, and it obviously meets a requirement as a English language course. Do you see that popularity declining if it was recategorized as a health course? Do you see that students are taking this course to meet a requirement, or do you see it as they're taking a course for the content? Through the chair to Mr. Testani, if you can answer better.
I'm just going to say that if we make it a health course, a health teacher would have to teach it. The current staffing could not teach it. It would be out of their content area, which would mean there needs to be a will and a skill of someone in the health department at both schools to be able to do this. So as I mentioned, I think at the last meeting, this course will probably die on the vine if it gets shifted into the health curriculum, because I highly doubt there's the will or the skill in the health department to want to teach the course at the same level as the current place it sits in the English department. And correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I fully appreciate that. I think it's just good for the public to understand the concerns from board members in terms of the curriculum, and also balance that with what we're hearing from staff and students who are currently enrolled. So I think it's just important to have both sets of information. Thank you.
Quick follow-up. In my understanding, the entire standards would have to be changed to align with health standards, and therefore this actually just would not be the same course that it is. It would become health standards based, which are not these literary based. So I hear what you're saying. I'm saying it literally, everything about it would have to change, right?
So I guess, can I clarify? Would it inherently just be a different course if it was not in this curriculum?
Yes.
Thank you.
Reading might be able to be the same, but the standards and everything from the state would have to change in that. Yeah. And I'll figure just from experience that people who take AP Lit and Lang also take this just for, because they're English people or just are interested in the content, just in my experience.
Thank you.
Mrs. Guernsey?
Just quickly, I wanted to thank everyone who worked on this for making these changes. I mean, just to see the process that this has gone through is just really impressive. And the chart on page 7, the grade to 8 to 9 alignment, was so helpful to me. I've been really stuck on this grade 6 through 8. I'm still kind of a little bit uncomfortable with what I perceive as level of rigor for those grades. I just really worry about our advanced students and what they're going to be doing reading, especially the grade 6 book. So I'm not totally there, but this chart was really helpful for me. So I appreciate that. And thank you for all the work you put into this.
Anyone else? Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly?
Thank you. And I apologize to Ms. Goss. I only this morning saw that you had replied to my email. And there's obviously a great deal of content in your reply that I'm trying to get through, and I don't want to ask questions that you answered. So I apologize that I'm a little bit halting right now as I try to get caught up. But just a few scattershot points. First of all, to that point regarding that literature of well-being, I do remind the board that one of the things I don't want to hear that it's a popular course as a reason for it to continue, because first of all, it wasn't supposed to even be offered. It never received Board of Ed approval. Therefore, it never received vetting of any kind before it started to be offered by the board. Excuse me. Of course, it was vetted by staff. But
So that doesn't mean, I've never said a word against the course. I remain consistent with the idea that as an aspect of mental health, of that idea of well-being, but no, I continue to make the argument, and that's not the sword I'm going to die on here, that I'm going to fall on, but I would continue to argue that what our expert trained English teachers are best suited for, or what our students most need from them, are accessing more difficult texts. And thus my question to you, upon seeing that the Odyssey was being turned into a book circle offering in English 9 college prep level, I find that inappropriate. They don't access it because I'm teaching that level as sophomores, and they could not access that independently without a great deal of scaffolding and initial work. And that's what I'm trained for, and that's what the students need me for. And to Mr. McGarry's point of how they then handle college level work, it's from that level of preparation, and that they can handle whatever college throws at them. Or if they're in the trade school and they're getting that type of nonfiction work, I appreciate your allusion to the idea of needing nonfiction and informational texts. That is also what they are getting from science and social studies. The world of fiction, they are only getting from this department. Maybe social studies will throw in a poem or two. But essentially, this love of the beauty, of the art, of literature is only coming from this department. And for that to be sacrificed, for example, I have no idea why there's so much of a reemphasis on research in all of these documents. I mean, does it have a place? Sure. Was it lacking, especially from the middle school component? I thought yes. I don't understand it's being emphasized and lauded as, really being hammered back into the high school curriculum. Personally, I hadn't seen that as a great loss. I thought that what they did there, if they're using the text as they're meant and dealing with that context, it's an incredibly rich curriculum. So one of the points that I remain 100% committed to is an argument I made 9 years ago with the support of the full board. When the ELA curriculum came before us in 2014, where there were no assured texts, and the board made very clear that it expected assured texts, and it wasn't even me that actually brought up the canon, that they wanted to see that in there because it was lacking. And the board put me forward as a liaison to meet with staff and with the leadership, at which point it was agreed explicitly to a minimum of 2 required texts per year for full year courses. The mistake, we didn't make them put it in writing. It was a handshake across the table. The then leader of the ELA, the program director, spoke to it, agreed to it. I then gave my endorsement, which the board heeded as we were listened to and all our concerns were addressed. That was 2014. And when the leadership turned over, that was dropped and it has never been brought back. And so the fact that this is a source of debate right now is incredibly disheartening. That having one mandated text is viewed as a compromise shows no awareness of what was agreed to in 2014. And I remain, and I could go on at length, and I don't need to because I don't remember how many times I've brought it up at this point. But my commitment to that, it is utterly consistent with the commitment we are showing in the policy committee to wanting to have better grading practices, not better grading practice, consistent grading practices, so that an English 9 student at Ward is having something that the grade produced there is something similar to an English 9 experience at Ludlow. That is something that we as a district should be offering. And that part of the core of that, the foundation of that, are the texts that our students are reading. There were some references in the documents and in the presentation to the one that you showed, the alignment of English 8, 9, and 9H. I look forward to going back and reading that more carefully. I appreciate the thought that went into that because I think that's very important. We've been emphasizing that for over a year. We want to see how our 8th graders are being prepared for what, until this point in time,
has been a rough transition, especially to 9 honors. There was a reference in there to 4 full-length texts in grade 8. I have no idea what those are. Obviously, I know The Giver and I know Night. I don't know what the other 2 are. I'm not sure why we are hitting Shakespeare, by the way, is not a requirement in grade 8. As it's written right now in the document, that's at the will of the teacher. I'm not willing to accept. Why? Because I accepted it in 2014 and I rue that decision because it was dropped. And I think that is to the detriment of the education. I mean, the board doesn't own these courses. This is for the sake of the children of Fairfield Public Schools. No staff member owns these. It was a staff member who made the decision to let that fall by the wayside, which was incredibly, and that was just to be clear for everyone here, that's not anyone at this table or up in front. This was other staff members. Disrespected the will of the board. And I won't accept anything but something in writing. I just won't. And again, happy to go on at length about that. But I think you get the idea. So the love of literature, the need for fiction was important to me. Some of the other questions that I had regarding, again, I still, thank you, Mrs. Flynn, for referencing that language, which leads into the lists of texts. As phrased still makes them sound optional. The only courses where it's clear that you will choose from this list were, I think it was AP Lit. I don't even think AP Lang made it that. AP Lit was very clear. Teachers will choose from this list for this unit. Nowhere else was there language like that. Grade 7, again, I wasn't sure if it's, oh, never mind. This is where I said I don't want to go into the specifics because I'm not sure, Ms. Goss, what you have already answered. One question I had, for example, about the Greek mythology, which thank you so much for committing to that as being more robust. I really do appreciate that. One question I have is why isn't that in grade 6? Where they're covering ancient Greek history. There, finally, I'll take a breath and let you jump in. Not that, of course, I also invite you to comment on anything else I've said, but that would be a specific question.
I'm not sure I have an answer for you. I think when the grade 7 curriculum was developed, teachers had already committed to having a mythology unit in place. And we wanted to expand that so that it was world mythology. It includes Greek mythology. I do know also there's maybe an opportunity to look at that alignment and connection with social studies. There are new social studies standards are coming out. I know there's work being done by Lisa Oliver and her department on the social studies curriculum documents. So that's something that we could possibly revisit and look at again, and particularly as the social studies landscape shifts a bit.
So they would be, well, you wouldn't know this because she's not here to speak for it, but the possibility of shifting geography out of grade 7 and that this might be something that works. Never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, it all depends on the content standards and the layout. And so they're at the very early stages right now. And so we wouldn't have an answer right now, but I guess in the future, if that is a natural organic fit, and we would absolutely be able to take a look at that. Yeah.
Yeah, because believe it or not, it also has a budget connection. Because if we're talking about investing a great deal of money in a team model, which I have always, not quite reflexively, but have always, to completely endorse the direction of staff, because to be clear, the middle school team model costs this district a great deal of money. We could more efficiently educate our middle schoolers if we dropped it entirely, but we have backed it and supported it. Here's an example of some place where it would naturally lend itself to interdisciplinary work in the team model between projects and curriculum overlap, which, to jump ahead, is also one of my arguments of not understanding the English 11 curriculum, of why we don't take advantage of more of those cross-curricular connections with history. We have a model already with our American Studies courses, and I'm not saying to replicate that. That's a very special experience with team partners. But anytime you do that, where you get the benefit for every child, you will especially get the benefit for your high needs learners. And I'm not hearing enough about them. In part, I haven't brought it up either, so I'm not faulting you. But of how we are working to serve them, knowing how at present time, 25 to 30% of them aren't at grade level. And something like this kind of an interdisciplinary connection is a way to better meet the needs of those high needs learners. Let me toss that one over to you. Or not.
Well, whenever we're at the middle school, they use the library media specialist as the hub, their location as the hub for all of their work. We do see interdisciplinary work happening. The library media specialists were involved in the development of our courses at the elementary level, and we have relied on them since the development of this in order to think about how we can move forward. What kind of projects can they help to support as the hub of the building? And so that's where we're seeing a lot of that cross-disciplinary work.
But how does the team model have anything to do with that?
So currently, the way that the model works is that we have teachers teaching two different subject areas, right, in some instances. And what we're proposing is that we change that model so that they're teaching that one course, right? But you're talking about, in terms of the cross-disciplinary connections, like more of a humanities focus or a STEM focus kind of a thing. That would have to be explicitly written into the implementation guides, and something that we would have to explore with the help of all of our staff members. Absolutely. Yeah, and we agree. We understand. I mean, obviously, when you contextualize things for students like that, it makes a lot more sense. They make those connections. And so we did put the content in where it was organically embedded in our courses, but we would have to continue to take a closer look at that.
So I'm just going to throw out there something, and I probably shouldn't look at your faces while I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's a thought, because obviously what's incredibly frustrating about this, but I totally understand it, is that we're not doing these two curricula simultaneously. And so what I throw out there is the idea of, when social studies comes up, because I know they have lots that they are changing, it is entirely possible that we're going to be missing a golden opportunity if we don't revisit really select parts of our curriculum. And I especially think middle school. Your faces didn't actually change as much as I thought they would when I said that, but you're being very professional about it.
Well, it's a process. It's not an event. When you write curriculum, it is a process. It's not an event. And there has to be opportunities during implementation to make sure we have that feedback cycle, right? And we're committed to that. We're going to do that. And you're going to have status updates and things like that. But when that social studies curriculum is written, you're right. We do probably need to go back and take a look to see where the alignment can be. And we can change our implementation guides. We know we can't change these, but we can change our implementation guides. And so the delivery is what we can work on.
But what I'm throwing out there is the possibility that it's this that we're looking at. And I'm going to use the easy example. If it was thought that there was really a missed opportunity of moving the Greek mythology to grade 6 because it was decided that ancient Greek history would stay there, that's what I'm saying, is that to me that is an easily identified missed opportunity, which again, I'm not looking to dig in on that anymore now. I think it's a shame, because I think it would really serve a number of our students really well. I want to bring up another topic that Mr. Peterson brought up, which is, again, we can't tell from the documents which ones for program of studies are fitting the writing bucket in the program of studies and which ones are fitting the reading or literature bucket. And I do want to point out that, and I don't remember if it was the literature of the well-being that you made the reference to the seniors who are taking that. Well, as of now, 10th graders could be taking that. So just as a reminder that we've really thrown the door open on who could possibly be enrolled in these courses. But for some of them, I think specifically of gender perspectives in literature. And again, the name of the course is In Literature. And there were a lot of movies. I believe in the second unit, there may have been only one book, and the rest of it was film. And I was wondering if you could explain that to me.
and I should say, I'm assuming that it's in the literature because I can't tell, because I didn't pull up the program of studies, which I should have. If it's actually considered a writing course, it's being used as the spur to writing, then that's a different idea. But if this is literature, why so much film?
Okay, so a couple of things. So one, we're in discussions right now about these buckets, if you will, of electives and where to put them. And the feeling, I've had conversations with the department and with the building leaders in each of the high schools, and we really believe firmly that all of the courses should be a fair and balanced number of reading and writing experiences. There should be a balance in each of them. So if a student is taking Call of the Wild, that student is reading literature and writing and doing both. And that's, it's just the focus of the class is slightly different. So that's a discussion we're having, because if you have an electives program, it really should be students electing to take what they have an interest in, right? And not being forced into a choice because they need something from the other side, if you will, right? So we're moving in that direction. I think that's a positive direction for students. It gives more flexibility and allows students to take what they want. In terms of the gender...
Just so I quickly, so you're considering dropping that?
Yes.
Gotcha.
In terms of the gender course, it's my understanding, and we do have one of the seasoned gender teachers here. I believe she's still here, Dr. Faber, and she can speak to this more if she so desires. But the second unit, I believe, yes, there are films that are identified, and there is that one text, The Last American Man, but students also engage in like some choice books. There's a lot of different texts that they can choose from to read as a book club, if you will. I hate to use that language for senior classes or what have you, but I think it's sort of more of that structure. So they're choosing, so they are reading more books. They're not just watching films.
So I guess I'm unclear on why more of them aren't referenced, because the films are explicitly referenced.
It's a fair point. We could add, maybe a list of all the texts from which students are able to choose. It's just not there yet.
Okay. Again, I just point out that with the word yet, and we're supposed to be voting by the 25th. So, you're hoping that we're voting by the 25th. I'm less sure, but we keep thinking more things to be doing. Of course, I'm sure it'd be good to vote, because then we can stop tweaking it, or stop giving you feedback and sending you emails. But in any case, thank you for considering that. I then would also look at the sports and literature course, which was far heavier on film study than it was on any reading. I have to admit, when the course was first proposed, I'm immediately jumping to all of the incredible works of historical fiction and sports fiction on this topic. And that was not at all the design of this. This is more nonfiction in its nature, and that's fine, because that could be fulfilling a different perceived need out there, except that there was far more film than there was reading.
So not intentional. And I would just add for the whole board to consider, I've created a version of that course in the last 3 districts in which I worked, and I taught that course myself. And what's fabulous about the sports lit class is that students who maybe never felt that they were the shining stars in an English class, or never felt that this is something that they connected to, this discipline, find that they are now the experts. They have a very well-developed vocabulary. They read and write about, sometimes for the paper, and they watch sports programs, a lot of nonfiction, or if there are any around the horn fans in the audience. But so they spent a lot of time reading. But what's really important, I think, for a sports class is the flexibility to be able to respond to whatever comes up in the sports world. It's so important, for example, to have the flexibility to say, oh my God, we're starting another Olympic Games. We need to be able to tag into that, read about what's happening in the Olympics. What are the current controversies that are taking over? What cultural experiences do we want to talk about? All that sort of thing. So I think it feeds into that. Every sports class that I've ever been a part of, including one that I started in Staples, that is a very robust, very difficult class, very rigorous, They are reading and discussing, they are writing articles, they are bringing their knowledge of the world of sports in, and they're doing it in a way that really they feel a sense of pride in their ability to maybe for some kids finally find their footing in an English class.
And I would argue that there's some sports journalism out there, which is some of the finest, right? I mean, I think of Rick Riley, I think of Dan Shaughnessy, I mean, the entire Boston Globe staff. Those are amazing writers. And so that's why I found it disheartening reading the description, seeing because I promise you, if I walk past a room and a teacher has a down moment and kids have their Chromebooks open and they're sitting with their back to me and I'm walking by, half the boys in the rooms have sports up. I mean, so watching sports on video is not expanding their critical thinking skills, but the reading about it, right? That's why I found it disheartening, because I don't think watching more film is exactly what they need. But I do respect your experience and that it is a vigorous course. I just would throw out there that I found the description of it, especially Unit 2, to be very film heavy. One other question, and then I have to go back and review the answers that Ms. Goss gave me. The film analysis and criticism course names no films.
Also peculiar, but I think that's something that, we can certainly address through the implementation guide. But I do think that the film teachers rotate through a lot of different films and they bring in new films. They use what's available through the what's available through Swank. And so I think it's something that rotates often. And so I can imagine also if I were the film teacher and I decided I was going to use a particular film with students and it was one they'd already watched many times and spent a lot of time, I think I might want to have them experience a different film. So I think that's probably, I'm going to say probably because I was not there for the development of that particular course from its inception, the reason for having that flexibility and not identifying specific films that everyone then feels they must show if it's not the right film for that particular class.
Are there ever 2 sections of that offered in a semester? Is that a very popular course? And so again, what you're capturing then is 2 completely different experiences based on who's teaching the course.
I wouldn't say they're completely different experiences because they are focusing on the critical aspects of film viewing. I watched one of Mr. Cole's film classes. I learned so much just in one class, but he was really talking about stopping and looking at the shots and the angles and students writing about it and all that. So that's the experience they're having. Whatever film it is just a different vision of that, but they're still focusing on the same standards of film analysis.
And so my final comment on that is that, and I respect that is part of the course, 100%, as it would be with literature. But what that again would then be coming at is all of these courses are skills courses. And that is something which I'm fundamentally rejecting. That is not the primary focus of the ELA department, is we teach skills. We don't. We do teach content. And I want to be clear. What you just said, I completely agree as a part. But it more so often reads in these documents as the whole, and that's what I have a problem with.
Can we respond to a few of the points that you've brought up? Okay, the first one is the historical, and this is well before Janine and Julie were here. So 14 years ago with Promise and Blood, Handshake, I don't know, for the 2 books that we would all do by course. I actually been teaching here longer than that. I wasn't a part of that conversation. But with all due respect, even if those promises had been made then, we were under curriculum review now, right? We have new staff members here now. So in the process of revising the curriculum documents, changes have been made in every respect. The state standards have changed. Everything has changed. So all of the things that were in those previous documents, even if they had been agreed on by the board at that time, would be up for review now. I understand that you want at least 2 books per course that are assured experiences. But one book, just so you understand, by course was a compromise. On the part of the teachers at the high school level. None of these documents is what any one of us would write as an individual, right? If I were creating the 612 curriculum documents, this is not what they would look like. I participated in a collaborative process that involved a lot of compromise. And I'm not sure, to be honest with you, why it fundamentally matters if we're looking at a unit on the ideal society, why if in my class we're reading Never Let Me Go by Katsuo Ishiguro, and in another teacher's class they're reading 1984 by George Orwell, other than perhaps somebody's, I mean, both of those books are masterworks in our language. I'm not really quite sure why it matters other than an individual's just, personal preference. Now, I agree with what you said at the previous meeting. It is helpful to be able to refer back to what students have shared experiences with in their, their reading. I love to be able to, to refer to Antigone. It's not Oedipus, but, same trilogy. I love to be able to refer to that and like the concepts of Greek tragedy as we move forward with tragedy, but I am not perhaps quite as tied to it as you are, and I am more tied to it than a lot of members of the department. So when I tell you that this is a compromise, it is just that. And we wanted to have a much longer list of books for each course, much, much longer, because we're interested in expanding, expanding the representation of the authors in the courses. But the more voices you add, right, that, we only have so much time, more and more keeps getting taken by things for our instructional time. We only have so much time in any given year. But I just want to say also, to your point about content, look, I can appreciate what both of you say about the content of English literature, and I can assure you, neither of you loves it as much as I. So however much you feel like you love it, I mean, my love is as great. Want to fight? No, can I strike that from the record? All right, but I do want to say, while we were here, like literally while we were here, I was checking my email. No offense, Mr. Tastani, while you were going over the budget. Thrilling as it was, I did check my email to make sure nobody had reached out about the upcoming midterms. And at 7:08 this evening, I received an email from a former student, and I'm just going to read it to you. I'm not going to give you her name, although she's not a student right now, so this is not illegal. Just want to put that out there. But 7:08 tonight, she emails me. I hope it's not weird that I'm emailing you, but you were my sophomore year English teacher a few years ago. I was recently at Barnes & Noble, and I stumbled upon a copy of Never Let Me Go by Katsuo Ishiguro. By the way, my moral hero. That's a story for another day. A book I first read in your class. Maybe it's because I'm older now, or perhaps it's because I reread it knowing what the end is, so knowing what to look for throughout the book. But the book is even more incredible than it was years ago. I would have never read it in the first place if it hadn't been introduced to me, so thank you. The book prompted me to reread more books introduced in your class. The Glass Menagerie, Things Fall Apart, and In the Time of the Butterflies. Like Ishiguro's, all of these books have completely enthralled me. Again, I hope it's not weird to email you out of the blue, but I was wondering if you could send me more book recommendations based on the syllabus for your class and even your personal taste. I read anything, so please recommend as many wildly different books as you'd like. Again, thank you so much for introducing me to these books. Their impact has stayed with me long after I graduated high school. And I mean, why isn't Macbeth on this list? We read that. She didn't mention it. I don't understand. But my point is, whether it had been In the Time of the Butterflies that year, this year I chose not to do it. I'm doing The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan instead. They're both beautiful, wonderful books that address the thematic questions that are I mean, gorgeous works of literature. It is impossible to read any book that is an achievement in our language without an appreciation for its aesthetic value, without love, without addressing love. It's an impossible thing, to avoid discussing. All of these things, you have to trust the teachers that you've hired, right? You have to trust us to care about the students. We love them. To care about the literature. Honestly, why else would we be doing this job, right? We love the books. We love the children. We have every desire to help them reach their potential. Analyze is in there more than love or beauty because it's in the state standards, more than love and beauty, but not in our implementation. You know what I mean? Not in that. I hope your children come home to you, right? And talk. I have parents who read books with their children as we're going through the curriculum. And so I just want you to understand how much we all care and to show a bit of trust in our credentials and our love of what we do. And I hope you can see that in the portfolios, which are the perfect demonstration of what students get in our courses.
Thank you. Thank you. Mrs. Manson-Canelli, are you finished?
Yeah, I do want to be really clear about something. 2 is a compromise. I teach a full year course with 7 requirements. I teach a half year course with 3 requirements. So I promise you, this is a compromise. What initially was presented to us was 0. And that's 0 from an expectation of 2, which you talk about trust. I learned my lesson on trust. And so just to be clear, do I trust this app? My children have had wonderful experiences in the English Language Art Department. I don't question that. And I love the passion that you bring to this discussion. And I don't doubt that obviously your students, or certainly the student of that email, benefited from that. But we have to assure that every single 9th grader is getting certain experiences and that they have those opportunities. I mean, you spoke better than I did, in fact, about the benefits of one teacher being able to make references to previous specific texts. And again, for your high needs learners, how important that is to access their prior knowledge. We just went through an entire, and I'm going to say it was a fight. There was tension. There was a lot of angst over it, but the background of the change of our literacy requirements for K through 5 and the science of reading, so much of which involves background knowledge. When did that stop being a concern? Because based on what you're saying is, oh, but 9th graders, we should just have complete autonomy. I'm going to make the argument as one board member, I do not agree with you, and I won't be supporting that.
Well, it's not complete autonomy, though, because there are just 25 texts listed in the document, and then there are selections put in every unit. So again, for me personally as a teacher, whether students read Antigone or Oedipus or some other work of Greek tragedy, whether they read Julius Caesar or Macbeth, whether they read the Iliad or the Odyssey, and by the way, when I started teaching, we did both. For me, that's immaterial. I'm able to help students make those connections, whichever text their former teacher chose from the list with which I am familiar. I haven't found that to be difficult. Also, we do have the benefit of the writing conference built into our schedule. So I meet with every student at the beginning of the year to review his or her portfolio, as do all of my colleagues. So I can go through with each student individually their progress, what they read last year, the works that they wrote. They set then goals for the coming year, but I have every understanding of where they're coming from and what they've done. So I haven't found that to be a challenge. So again, one has been a compromise for us with other things put in to assure experiences that are common, though not identical. There are too many great works of literature. There are just too many. I wouldn't want to teach the same 7 every year.
Can I ask, are you, okay. I just have one really quick question actually on the documents. For grade 9 and 10, both college prep and honors, there's a formula, right? Like you have the overview and then you go into each of the units. And for 9th grade, we know that the required one is Romeo and Juliet, and then in grade 10, it's Macbeth. But then in grade 11 and in 12, in the units, that drops off. You talk about the required book in the overview, but there is no unit in which you specify the Gatsby or Man's Search for Meaning. So I just wanted to wonder why the formula changed and it's not specific in within the units for those 2 grade levels.
I would.
They're listed as a resource.
Yes.
But unlike 9 and 10, right? It doesn't say, so like unit 3, this is the unit where we will read Gatsby or whatever. That's not in there. So I just was, there was a reason for that, or was it just an oversight perhaps, or I just wasn't sure.
I think it was just a different group of people collaborating on those course documents. And so we have the text identified as a core text, but the placement is maybe a little bit more fluid.
No, it's not fluid. It's listed in a unit, but it's not listed as the required book for that unit.
Sorry, my misunderstanding. So if it's not identified specifically in the unit, that doesn't change the fact that it's
okay, so just though that is the case in 9 and 10, it's not the case in 11 and 12. So I'm asking just what this discrepancy was. That's all. So nothing up. And so on this chart on page 7, thank you so much for putting that together. The writing conferences to support student progress. Are you saying that that's in these, because we're reviewing the curriculum documents, or is that just kind of an explainer for us? That's not in this requirement in the document anywhere, because I had specifically was looking for that. Like as part of the portfolio unit, perhaps.
I'm not sure that it's mentioned specifically, but in the documents, however, it is something that happens, and it will certainly be a part of what we put in our implementation guide.
Yeah, it's a part of our job description. So we can't really put it in a curriculum guide because it's completely dependent on the budget from year to year.
Okay, I was just wondering, since it was on this chart, I just wanted to clarify that it's not actually in the document. Okay. That's all that I had. Did anybody have anything else? Mr. Krasnov?
I really appreciate your passion and how you spoke. I do have some concerns about not having 2 required texts. It's not because of people like you that are passionate. I'm just worried that we bring on new teachers that are just starting to get their feet wet and just starting to learn the process. It's really good to have 2 solid books that they can have an experience with and know year in, year out for the first few years and get used to it. That's more my concern with that. So I do kind of understand what Ms. Maxcanelli say. In addition to that, though, in terms of the film, I personally would like to see kind of a list of at least some of the films that they're going to see, because there's a pretty big range that this class could be taught. And there are some classics, like Citizen Kane and some other ones that I would love to see some of that also taught, not just modern films, but that's just my opinion. Thanks.
Okay, so our first read, the backup today, that's technically what we're supposed to be voting on the next time that we do this. So now I've heard about possible changes. So we've got lots of colors in here already. Am I misunderstanding you that what we have today is not what you're expecting us to vote on? Because that's not what I heard.
So if you would allow it, we would propose to make changes tomorrow and get those changes to you by tomorrow as an addendum for some of these tweaks, especially some of the typos, because that should not happen. And wondered if you can vote on that. What we're concerned about, it's not necessarily grade 6, 7, and 8 right now. It's more about the high school and the program of studies. And so we sort of need to stay on track. We'll do whatever we need to do in order to do that. If we send you the list of those edits tomorrow, is that something that you would be able to vote on? Maybe we don't make the edits in the documents themselves. We do it on okay. We did it for kindergarten. I know that there was one line in kindergarten that we had to make reference to in the minutes that you were approving it with that change. And so, yeah.
I want us to vote on clean ELA documents, to be honest with you. So, I mean, I think that we would need the documents because that's what we're voting on, right? And that's what's going to get posted. So, I mean, my understanding is that we were going to be voting on this all at the next regular Board of Ed meeting on the 25th. The 16th and the 23rd are special budget.
I thought I had in my notes it was the 16th, because again, we were thinking about the program of studies.
Guernsey, do you have a question?
Yeah, about that. I was just wondering for the program of studies if those courses could be listed as pending board approval, and then that would give us time to get it right or whatever it is that it's done properly. I just don't want to feel rushed.
Certainly done that before in the past, that it goes in there as pending Board of Ed approval, so students can register for it and things like that. But Mr. Issa?
Question on procedure. If they were to provide us a memo with a list of the edits, why could we not vote on it and then somebody could make a motion to amend using the appendix as the edits? I don't see a problem with doing that.
I'm personally I'm not comfortable doing that. I'd rather have the document that we are voting on. Is it too hard to make them in the document?
No, not at all. Not at all. We can do that.
I think what they're saying is then it becomes another first read.
No, it wouldn't.
Okay. What color do you like?
Green.
You got it.
So to be clear, if they do this, we'd still be able to vote on it.
Yeah, because it would be like per the backup of January 25th, The motion's always very clear what one we're actually referencing.
Okay, I just want to be clear that we can move this forward to a vote. So however we have to do that, I appreciate you working with the staff.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's clear up the timing though, because it wasn't on our draft 16th agenda. So we've already met on that agenda. I mean, technically, we're supposed to be doing the budget, so do you want it on the 16th? Or the 23rd? Or really, it should be the 25th, but.
We also want to get started on implementation guides, and so the sooner the better, yes. And we also have some professional learning opportunities coming up that need to be planned. So we're thinking the sooner the better, but we will do whatever the board.
Okay, so let's just talk offline. Because we've already done the agenda for the 16th, so let's just talk tomorrow about it, and we'll talk about tomorrow, okay? All right, anyone else? All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so very much. Thank you.
All right, approval of minutes at the Board of Education. Approve the following minutes: 12/6/2023 BOE special meeting minutes, 12/12/2023 BOE regular meeting minutes. Can I get a motion, please? Mrs. Flynn can second. Mrs. Rinaldi. All in favor? Motion.
Jason Lee says aye.
Mrs. Rinaldi, minutes. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Motion passes unanimously. Superintendent's report.
Just a couple of things. First, I want to just announce that all our newly designed school websites have now officially gone live. Over the past few months, the web admins at each school have worked hard to purge old content, refresh and update information to be useful and easily accessible for families in the community. And I just want to thank Marco and our IT department for his continued expertise and his help every step of the way. So thank you to all those who worked on that. So now we officially are now transitioned over to all new websites from the district on to all the schools. Just want to congratulate Ms. Foreman from Tomlinson Middle School. Ms. Dina Foreman has been chosen on the Nutmeg Nominating Committee for Middle School. Congratulations for this incredible accomplishment. And I just want to remind parents that tomorrow night, the Fairfield Collaborative for Youth Mental Health will host an event at the Fairfield Regional Fire School at 6:30 p.m. The event will feature Ashley Carr-Hampton, a seasoned psychotherapist who will bring a wealth of experience in mental health, trauma, and CBT to the table. She will address critical topic of depression and suicide among school-age children. She'll also share insights on nurturing resilience in our youth and equipping parents with valuable tools to support their children's mental well-being. So tomorrow night, if anyone has the availability, 6:30 at the Fairfield Regional Fire School. Lastly, I do want to address a concern regarding some recent events over the last several days and a decision that was made on Friday that seems to have triggered some discussion amongst folks in the community, a lot of speculation, a lot of assumptions that were made. And I want to be clear, there were some issues that were raised by some parents. I don't think it's relevant whether it's one parent or 100 parents. Every parent in the district has a voice and they should be heard, not just the loudest voices, but all voices. Regarding some possible age appropriateness when it came to content regarding a recent or an upcoming author visit to 3 of our elementary schools. I can say that it did land on my desk. I did want to do my due diligence to make sure that I could speak intelligently and informatively to make sure that those parents can have their concerns either verified or quelled a little bit. In doing my investigation and also my inquiry, I was backed into a corner by the bookstore representative on Friday afternoon that I needed to make a decision right there in the moment as to whether I was canceling the event or not. To err on the side of caution, the event was canceled. However, there was more work done behind the scenes over the weekend and on Monday to make sure that the process of gathering as much information as possible to make an informed decision was completed. And in doing that, I did reach out through the actual publisher to the author to revisit the possibility of either later this week on the scheduled date or a future date for the author to return back to Fairfield Public Schools, and also to offer that opportunity to the other 8 remaining elementary schools if they wanted to take advantage of it as well. So I know there's been a lot of assumptions made on people's parts as to book censorship and the malintent of certain groups of people in the community. I don't get the feeling, I did not get the impression that anyone had an agenda here. I know we live in a very tumultuous time in our society and in our nation where people are jumping to conclusions. And I want to say that there was nothing but positive and good intent in making sure that in this particular incident that things were looked at, questions were asked and answered, and that they can be communicated clearly to those individuals who have raised concerns. It was not one parent, it was not 100 parents. I don't know exactly in the end what this would have turned out to look like. However, to err on the side of caution and do my job to make sure that all children are protected, this is the decision that was made. And unfortunately, it's easy to sit back right now for some folks and pass judgment, but I can assure you that this will be rescheduled if time allows, and I think it will, to a later date for those schools and other schools who would like to participate in having this author come and speak to the population of students at those schools in the grade levels 3 through 5. So I just wanted to make that very clear and put that on the record.
Sorry, Mrs. Garza.
We've received so many questions about this, and because this is part of the superintendent's report, there's not an opportunity for the public to make comment or for board members really to ask questions. So I hope that we can see this item on an agenda in one of the upcoming meetings.
Jackson Kelly?
Well, to be constructive about it, I do want to, through the chair to Mr. Testani, I apologize for not answering your email yet, but I thank you for coming to me as policy chair, trying to run some text past me if this would be something that the policy committee could address. So there will certainly be an opportunity when policy committee, if that looks like the best avenue forward through the recommended language that you already gave me for consideration. So there would certainly be an opportunity then for the public to weigh in if they have their concerns, because I do appreciate that there was a process issue behind this. And so that this way, in the interest of transparency, that process could be vetted, discussed, and be something that staff is comfortable with and that the public is knowledgeable about, so that the whole notion of the conspiracy, the concern, the jumping to assumptions could be addressed if we say we're following policy, there's a procedure to go by here. And I do appreciate that I received that email from you, and I hope to be discussing that soon.
Thank you for considering taking this up again. It's not in a good light to be backed into a corner, especially as someone who has to make a critical decision in the moment. So I think people would appreciate, and if not, this is something that you may not agree with, and I hope that people can understand that it could be another topic down the road in terms of someone have a concern as a parent, and I will not ignore a parent concern, nor should I think it's relevant as to, how many concerns, whether it's 1,000 or 10. I think all parents have an equal voice again, and it's not about the loudest voice, it's just about voices being heard. And we want to hear everyone's voice and be able to, at least from my perspective, to speak intelligently and thoroughly about a topic and not to just go in blindly. And that's unfortunate that we're here.
Mrs. Lynn. Just through the chair to Mr. Testani, it's my understanding that we already do currently have policy in regards to parent complaints. If I'm familiar with it, it's 1312 in our community relations. And just through the chair to Mr. Testani, was that policy followed by the parents that did voice these complaints? Was chain of command followed, and how were those complaints translated to you?
I believe chain of command was followed, but chain of command is not always followed. So there are many instances on a daily basis where parents call directly to my office and want to speak to me, or they come here and they demand to see me and they will wait. We had one before the break who sat here until they saw somebody. So unfortunately, this is not as black and white when it comes to policy, but it is my obligation to make sure that parents are heard when they do bring complaints. A lot of times you can refer them back to the building principals. But in other instances, they require a little bit more attention and care.
Sure, go ahead. If I can just state a follow-up, just because in some of the communications, it seemed to indicate that the lack of PTA being involved in the process was an issue. And I just kind of want to clarify for the public and for ourselves that the PTAs are in no way an arbiter of who approves our speakers in our schools. And I assume that, at least in my experience as a past PTA leader at both an elementary school and then at PTA council, I never encountered a visit in our schools that did not involve the approval of either a library media specialist or a building principal. So I'd also want to inquire if that approval was had before this reversal was had in the visit that seemed to be very last minute.
The only mention of the PTA was that the PTA was not included in any of the correspondence, communication, or planning, which when parents did receive notification less than a week before the visit, it did cause some confusion. And I think having the PTA at least involved, not necessarily in the approval process, but at least involved in the planning and the promoting, makes it a lot more of a smoother process, because that would have happened much sooner, I'm sure, just like it did in 2 of the 3 buildings. So that this would have given me the time when it did land on my desk to be able to do the due diligence and not be backed into a corner by someone at a bookstore.
Thank you for the responses. I just think it's important to understand that while the intent, no one is questioning, there definitely was an impact in terms of the access for those students. And I hope that that can be rectified either through this being added to an agenda in the future or being discussed in policy as you addressed. To be continued. Committee liaison reports. Mrs. Flynn. Hi there. Just to reiterate, as Mr. Tassani noted in his budget presentation, the brown bag lunch hosted by the PTA in coordination with the PTAs will be on Thursday, January 18th at 11 a.m. I encourage all PTA members and non-PTA members to attend. It was always a very helpful thing to me as a parent, and I encourage the next meeting of the PTA. What? Oh, it's in this room. At 11 a.m. The next meeting of the PTA Council will be on January 24th at 7:30 p.m. on Zoom, and the following in-person meeting will be on March 27th at a location to be determined. For Fairfield Cares, the last meeting, there's really no updates. It was mainly a leadership and restructuring meeting. The next meeting is on January 17th at 8:30 a.m. And I was going to also share the Shining Through the Shadows presentation, but thank you, Mr. Shastani, for doing so. And that's it. Mrs. Rinaldi?
Board of Health update. So I attended my first meeting yesterday, wonderful group of people. We elected the chairperson, vice chair, and secretary. We received a report from the director of health. He spoke to the immunization grant, and they're currently researching ideas on how to spend that money. There was some discussion around that, and more details will be forthcoming. He did note that there's a very low demand for COVID vaccines at this time. So the Board of Health has only ordered around 50 to 75. So he noted that, and he thought that was very interesting. There's been much more need for flu and RSV vaccines. There's also an updated website for the Board of Health. And this is, it's much more tech savvy. This was supposedly a work in progress for the last 2 to 3 years. And we took a look at it. It looks really easy to use, really easy to search. The assistant director of health, who's in charge of the nurses across all of the schools, also spoke. And she said that there is a lot of new training going on for the nursing community, which is great. A lot of that didn't happen during COVID. And the the most successful one, or the most recent one, is their epilepsy training that they're doing. So they're going to continue with training and continued education for the nurses across the schools. And the next meeting will be the second Monday in February.
Oh, Mr. Lee?
Yeah, for the HVAC, HVAC committee, at the last BOF meeting before the holiday, the project was approved for an additional 16 million. So they are now on track going out to get bids to start the project at the 3 schools, along with the safety vestibules for the front of the school. So they're on track with the bids moving forward. And nothing to report from SEPTA this time, except we wish the SEPTA president a speedy recovery for a minor surgery.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Just 2 quick reports in Parks and Rec of interest to the Board of Ed is that they are looking at their fee structure and making it consistent with the recent rejiggering of the Board of Ed fee structure for facility utilization. So if that's a topic you hear anything about, that is being brought by Parks and Rec. Secondly, in policy, some things that are coming up for us is we, again, are trying to re-tackle with the goal of June of the grading policy. We did follow through with the audit, which I'll be meeting with Dr. Parrish next Tuesday prior to our meeting to discuss how we're going to tackle that one. I won't even tell you about it because I'll just leave it at that we have a lot of work to do there. Additionally, we are going to be taking a look at class sizes. That is something that staff approached me about redoing the current policy that we have on that to, in the spirit of, as Mrs. Jacobson would say, let's have policy reflect what we do. And we don't abide by our own policy. And so that is something we are looking to tackle as well very shortly.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, open board comment. Public comment? Anyone? Adjournment. Recommended motion that this regular meeting of the Board of Education, Mr. Peterson, seconded by Mr. Krasnoff. All in favor? Mr. Lee?
Aye. Jason Lee says aye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.